Hey, YouTube. How is it going? Welcome to my first live stream. I biffed it earlier today. I was doing a test and I forgot to change the setting from public to private. A couple of you are quick on the ball. Before I even knew it, I'm looking down at the thing and it's saying that there's two people connected. And I think it was a Fast Break Buddy or something like that, and Andy Lederman. And I was just like, oh my God. So I hit the end stream button. I was scared. I was like, oh my gosh. Thank you guys for being quick on the ball, but talk about some troopers there. I mean, as soon as the notification went out, they were on it. So anyway, we're going to talk about a bunch of stuff. You'll probably notice that some things are a little bit different than they normally are. I have a different camera for this. I didn't want to use. I usually use my iPhone 12, and it does pretty good. I like its camera. I like the way it takes the video and stuff like that. And then I go back and I edit it and all that fun stuff. But for today, we're using a 1080p piece of shit Logitech webcam. That's what we get now, and I tried to do the color correction as best I could, and we'll see about that. Gosh, what else is going on? Oh, as always, you should always have a drink of choice within arm's reach at all times. So let's drink to that. Feel free to leave a chat or comment or anything like that. I'll try to answer some questions. Obviously, the idea today is to talk about, boutique amps, what they are, what they aren't, why it matters, and why it doesn't. So let's see here. I'm gonna try to make sure I'm set up over here so I can see things. It looks like I am. So let's go over to the screen over here and check some things out. So obviously we know that boutique means a small company that offers highly specialized services and or products. It makes sense, right? So as far as things go for amplifiers in general, it was probably about the mid 90s or so when the whole term, boutique amplifiers came about. Not that it means much, but it was just a kitschy term at the time that was just popularized because companies like Matchless, Morgan, several others, Trainwreck, of course, and Dumble, of course, were kind of at their heyday, I think, at that point in time. So we know that they are kind of the forefathers of this whole boutique thing, right? Bruce Ignator had been around for a long time, even prior to that. I believe he started in 1975 or something like that with, modifying and stuff like that. And by 1980, mid 80s or so, he was pretty much well on his way to building guitar amplifiers under his own moniker. It progressed fast for him, but some of the others, it took a little while to build that level of ubiquity. Now, I don't really think boutique means much, if anything, at all, which is kind of unfortunate because, well, you would think that all these names that you see on this list are offering something special. I don't think they are. It's a horrible name, I think, and I don't like boutique amp distribution as a whole. To say the least. I would dare say that anybody on this list here is in a way kind of a sellout. That's a horrible way to say that, but realistically speaking, you're not boutique if you have worldwide, distribution of your amplifiers. You're not, boutique anymore when you have CE, ROHS, and UL listings on your amplifiers and stuff like that. Basically, if you're on a distributor list somewhere and you yourself as the name on that amplifier are not making that amp, you're probably not boutique anymore. Some of these I don't think ever were boutique to begin with. Synergy, let's bash this one out a little bit. It's not that I hate the company. It's nothing wrong with Synergy whatsoever. It's just, it's odd to me how they consider that to be something that should be on this list. Obviously, it's just a distribution thing. But it behooves these guys here to kind of make this name, this word, mean something to you, right? It only makes sense that it's important for them to have it mean something for you, which takes away from the little guys, the ones that are actually building these things, one by one, point to point, the good old school way. And there's a couple companies on this list that we'll go through here that I kind of feel live close to that, whatever. Whatever. You know what I mean? So I'm just waiting for people to actually say something. I don't wanna bang through this one too quick, but at the same time, this is live too. So just to go back, I'm gonna segue a little bit. I try not to edit my videos too much when I do them in the normal fashion that I do them. I usually go back and I'll cut out like a little snippet. Here, we'll make it even easier, so we'll do this. So I usually go back and cut like a little snippet of it, if I say something I don't care for. So this one's a totally different thing for me. So, you're going to get to listen to me ramble. How's that? But, so Synergy. They started, I don't know, 15 years ago, 10, 15 years ago, thereabouts. I think they kind of had like a little thing going with Randall for some little bit with their MTS, I think is what it was. Basically, it was this little module you stick in the front of the amp. Cool idea. The only thing that I always had a problem with it is that the Synergy amp, the actual amplifier for that module, isn't really configurable. Let's just imagine that they have 15 different preamp modules. Well, there can't possibly be 15 different amplifier configurations within that amplifier, right, to suit each one of those things. So that means there has to be some sort of thing going on. Obviously, it's always been a money-backed company. I think it was a clever idea put together by some people that were already pretty famous. I don't know much about the history of who they are or whatnot. I'm hypothesizing or speculating, I guess, if you will, that the people that are involved with Synergy were already part of the industry, had some connections already, had enough money to back up creating these things, and of course get some of the ubiquity that they currently have. Fast forward to now, and you got boutique amplifier or amps distribution kind of help pushing them along. Diesel, I don't know. So Diesel has been around for a very, very long time, and they used to make some of the most killer amps on the planet, really. I mean, German amplification company, over-engineered, yada, yada, yada. Nowadays, I think they're kind of par for the course. I mean, they've always been, I think, somewhat, PCB-based, and they have to be in order to put all, they like the Road King, the Mesa Road King. There's Andy Lederman. The Road King has everything in the kitchen sink, and the kitchen sink has its own world living within it. Like they got effects loops for the effects loop already in there. It's like craziness. Well, they have to do that on a PCB for a Diesel. So at some point there's going to be a dumbing down of it, especially when you're trying to make more and more money at it. Because objectively, the goal every year is to make more money, which is unfortunate because that's what drives all of these guys to do what they do. Soldano. I mean, he pretty much made his career off of the single amplifier, more or less created his entire career. And that's not to say anything bad about Mike Soldano. He created a killer, high gain Marshall-based amplifier. I think he threw an extra gain stage in there, more or less, and then put in a tube-driven, effects loop in the middle of it. And, out comes the SLO 100. That has been kind of the amp that has carried him for the last, 30, 40 years or something like that. Kudos to him. I kind of feel like about the time that Jet City came about is when he was looking to get out of the game. It seems to me that he was searching for some way to pass off his legacy, and he wasn't quite sure how to do it. And I think Jet City amplification was kind of like the end-all be-all to his beginning of the end, if you will. A cool idea. I'm kind of sad, honestly, that Jet City went away. I mean, they're not the most horribly made cheap amps, affordable amps that you can get, but I think it also kind of paved the way for boutique amps distribution because they came along a little bit after, I feel, or as I recall. Whatever. But, now Soldano, of course, sold off completely to boutique. I'm going to call him Bad from now on. So sold off to Bad. I think he just does more like, what do you call it? Consulting or whatever for them. Helps him get where he needs to go. Yeah, no, very much. Yeah, they sell people out for sure. Uh, they, it's a business model. That's really all it is. It's like, how can we take this name that is popular and yeah, no, yeah, very much a modded. It's a modded amp. It's a modded JCM 800 or whatever. Yeah. Um, it's a way to take that and then put it into a platform that maximizes the bean counters get involved. I call the bean counters the guys in there counting every the cost of every single resistor and capacitor, and they're like, well, if we buy 1,000,000 of these, we can get them down to 5 cents, but if we get this other version over here, we can get them down to 4 cents, and that's even better, right? It's literally, it comes down to a penny, and if they can cut that penny, they will do it, which means that we're ultimately paying the price because they're going to get every little penny that they can out of you. Friedman is an interesting story. I don't think he even became a company until around 2008 or something like that. So he was kind of a latecomer to this game that you see here. Bogner's been around for a long time. We'll talk about him in a minute, but Dave Friedman, definitely a good businessman, if you want to put it that way. I mean, he makes some cool amps, and at one point in time, he was definitely hand making these things and whatnot. But being a businessman, you're always going to do something that makes you more and more money. And I think he's gotten to that point now where he's made all the money he needs to make. It's easy enough for him to sell out. I didn't watch the Headfirst thing today. I like that dude. He's a freaking phenomenal player. The amp gods are... I wish. I'm not an amp god by any means, but Headfirst, that dude's a killer freaking player, and obviously he makes his amps, in real time, like 1-to-1. I think he's kind of gone PCB for some of them. He doesn't do it on turret boards anymore, I don't believe, but he's getting to that point where he's popular enough, and I think he knows what he's doing. So, at some point when you're going to have to go PCB, I think, if you want to become world famous. But anyway, getting back to Friedman. And then you fast forward to the point now where he's at, and he's got this kind of stuff here going. Where was it? It was literally monitors. He's selling these things here, and let me tell you right now, this is a crock of crap right here. Do not buy this. It is... He didn't even think of the design. He was like, hey, I want to do this. How do we do this? How do we market this? And some other dude at his company is like, well, first of all, we just take a PA speaker that is, meant to be like a... Never sell out. Never sell out. But yeah, literally take a PA speaker and try to make it look like it's a guitar cab. And, and then they're like, I know this amplifier module company. This amplifier module in here is an OEM unit. Like, there's 5 or 6 other companies out there that have a similar one. The only thing that's probably different on it is literally the sticker that they put for his name. I believe it's both Celestion speakers in there. Now, not that Celestion is bad. Celestion makes guitar-based, like, speakers and stuff. They used to have some PA stuff. I think they had a couple, pretty much an EV monitor. They had a couple of like actual PA speakers that they provided speakers for at one point, but more or less they're only known for making guitar and whatnot type speakers. Where it blew my mind was the specs. 129 dB with a 500 watt amplifier total power burst or whatever. Absolute crock of bull crap. That will never happen in a million years. I can tell you why. Let's just check it out right here. RCF NX12 SMA. So I'm a spoiled rotten mofo, and I own 8 of these things. For those of you who do not know, I am a sound engineer by trade. So at one point I had to buy these things en masse, and I own 8 of these piles right here. These are not cheap, by the way. They're going for a little over $2,000 a pop now. You're a sound guy. What do you think? We'll get to that. So these things here, 1400 watts peak, so almost 3x the amount of power, 700 watts RMS. So these things at idle are, already more wattage than those things. 129 dB max SPL. Imagine that. Same watt or same output, with 3 times the power. Do you think that this thing here is 3 times less efficient? Absolutely freaking not. What I can tell you is that this speaker here will put out 129 dB, like actually measurable output power. These things are great. I was actually shocked. I got a couple writers through my hands that actually spec these specifically, and I saw a comedian on stage earlier when I was watching YouTube, and he had these monitors up there too. I was kind of shocked. I didn't think these were the most popular speakers out there. I know that they were popular for a minute. They were popular for a minute with oh gosh, where was I going? I was saying anyway, whatever. Oh, with the freaking FRFR freaking people. Sorry, I'm like trying to think of the term and whatnot, but yeah. So there earlier on, like 5-10 years ago, FRFR, when it was kind of bludgeoning, if you will, bludgeoning, whatever. These were the speakers that everybody wanted to have, and these things are not cheap. Let me tell you what. So yeah, $21.99. I got mine a little bit cheaper than that, but these are real speakers. If you can afford to get those, get those. But I can tell you right now, these guys here absolutely will not do anything that they say they do. Now, a cool thing about the those RCF ones I was showing you, they were coaxial. So this guy here lives in the middle of this guy. So if you can imagine a speaker where all the sound comes out of the same point, wherever you are moving around it, all the sound comes at you from the same aspect or same place or whatnot. Whereas when you got a speaker like this, these two acoustic centers are separated by, 10 or 12 inches or something like that. So as you move around, this speaker gets closer. And if you're over here, this particular speaker is closer. It does cause issues. It's best to have coax. That's why I purchased those other ones. But anyway, sure, these things get loud, but they're not what they say they are. It's just a pile of crap. It's $1,399. $1,400. That's bull-oni. So here's something else we're gonna look at. Let's go JBL. I don't want to. I hate that freaking resume browsing crap. Get rid of that. Sorry, I'm talking to Google. Not that one. That's not even the one I wanted. Fuck's sakes. Get my shit together. That's why. Okay, hold on. That's where I biffed it. Yeah, there we go. Oh, imagine that. $1,700 is what these are going for. When I first got these, I own a pair of these as well. This is what I use for my main PA for stuff. So I was a sound guy that traveled the country, so I mostly used other people's stuff. I usually worked with like D&B Audio Technic, or D&B Audio Technic, RCF, some of their higher end stuff, L Acoustics, Martin Audio, and stuff like that. I worked with the higher upper echelon type of stuff. So that was my career, was traveling around the country, utilizing other people's equipment and doing sound for names you've heard of. Interestingly enough, one of my last offers, just to give you an idea of where I was in the game, I was pretty high up there. My last offer to do sound for a band, and it fell through, unfortunately. I don't think they ended up going on the tour, but it was for $37,000 a month indefinitely. I kind of wish that would have worked out. $440K a year sure wouldn't hurt. But it did not. But for when I was at home and I was doing the local stuff, this is what I would use for my local stuff. And I can tell you right now, even having worked with all the L Acoustic stuff and all the upper echelon crap, this is about as good as it gets for this price point. And I'll explain why. So going back to the whole Friedman thing, where this thing here with 500 watts is producing 129 dB, this guy here, let's see if we can get to the specs. Where are the specs at? There we go. They're saying that this thing here will produce 136 dB with 2,000 watts. Absolutely freaking not. If you do the math on it, that means that this speaker, let's get this up here. This speaker here has a sensitivity of about 104 dB per watt. All right, or 104 dB at 1 watt with 1 watt at 1 meter. That is insane. That is a level of sensitivity that only comes with speakers that cost 4 to 10 times as much. and I'm talking like Danley Sound Labs. You get something about like this, and it's not going to be $1,700. It's going to be, it's probably starting nowadays at $6,000, if not more. That doesn't include the amplifier. You still got to buy the amplifier, and the only way to get that level of performance out of them and have it under warranty and have them even sell it to you is to buy their $6,000 amplifier. So now you're $12,000 deep, and you've only got a speaker and an amp. So imagine that. So 104 dB, hell no. These will realistically get, I believe, 132 actual dB, like measurable actual output. And still 132 dB is pretty spanky. So to further beat this dead horse, don't always believe everything you read. There is math that can prove that some of this stuff is absolute BS. So getting back on topic again as to why Friedman is definitely not boutique. I don't think he had any actual say in this thing other than maybe the colors and, making sure his name was on the front of the thing, or, literally on 3 out of 6 corners. But let's move on. So other brands that are on here, Morgan Amplification. Now Morgan is one of the original boutique companies. They were around in at least the mid 90s, certainly around the later part of the the 90s or whatnot. They have gone the way of the dodo bird and have now sold out. They are a shell of what they used to be, and they weren't really. I'm being evil right now, but I hate talking crap, but I think this needs to be said. His amps are cool. They sound great. There's nothing wrong with them in terms of sonic quality, but they're not really made to a great spec. The wires look like they go underneath. Let's just call one up. Let's do some work here. So we're gonna do Morgan amp gut shot. Let's just do it. So go images. This might be a good one. Yeah, you can't really see that one. Let's see if we can find another one that's a little bit easier to see inside. I don't like that one either. Here we go. This one will do. No, it's not big enough. Gosh darn it. It's going to make me work today. Damn it. It's just really going to make me work today. I want to find one that's showing what I'm talking about here. And it's hard to do that when this one's big enough. We're just going to do this one. So hell with it. All right. So forget about all the shine over there. You can see all these wires that go underneath here, right? Those wires go underneath. Let's minimize that. They go underneath like this. You can actually pull this thing up a little bit so you can do some work in there, which is to say that it looks nice because the wires kind of shoot out in a way, but they don't always come from the right spot on this board here. There's a couple other things that they do that are some no-nos. If I'm not mistaken, they put the fuse too far back in the circuit, so it's not actually to code. Psionic Audio, Lyle, he goes through over some of his things about his dislikes of Morgan amplification. This whole thing here where they're using, 2 different brands of capacitors here, I don't get it. I don't understand it. It makes no sense to me. Pick one, go with it. It's a cost thing. Like, I think this here is for I don't even know what it's the bias circuit. So they went with this one here for the bias circuit, and then these ones here for the rest of the power circuit. They use at least 3 different types of resistors in here. It's just a bunch of malarkey. And it's not exactly done up all that pretty. It's just kind of ooga booga is what I call it. It's ooga booga. Like, I built amp, that kind of thing. So it's not really made to a very high standard. And there's, things like this really cheapen it up for me. Essentially, he's using the same chassis for 5 or 6 different amps, and when he doesn't need a hole, he just plugs it with a 25-cent, plug that you can buy at Home Depot or something like that. That kind of stuff bugs the hell out of me. Now, I will give him this. He's always sold his amps at a pretty good price point, and as far as the sound quality goes, sure, they sound fine. There's nothing really wrong with them, but as you can see here, Psionic Audio doesn't really care for him either, so no surprise, but you can see it's not that they're ugly or disgusting, but they didn't really go through and straighten out all the leads. Like, they're, just kind of straightened by hand, if you will, and then stuffed in this thing. I can't stand that kind of stuff. I like my leads being straightened up and all that jazz. But Not really boutique anymore. Let's get on with Bogner. Dude, Reinhold has more swag than freaking Johnny Depp. He put the cock in Peacock. We'll talk more about cock in a minute. But yeah, he put the cock in Peacock. Like Reinhold Bogner is a freaking just a rock star, just a straight up freaking rock star. And at one point, he used to make his amps one by one on a turret board, and they were truly boutique at one point. I don't obviously I he's doing something weird now. He is listed on BAD, but only for his pedals. I don't think he actually sells any of his amplifiers anymore. I don't think they're only. Let me stop and slow down a little bit. They are only distributed now by Sweetwater, I believe. I think that's the only place you can actually buy his actual amps that he's making. Maybe you can go to his LA store and buy them there. I think he kind of realized that it was time to slow the roll a little bit and focus in on what his namesake really is, because he's made some really cool amps. And then they went the way of the dodo bird for a while. When he went to the whole PCB thing and he started using these weird like power supplies and stuff like that, they started running into some serious problems, and I think that's when he kind of pulled out. Obviously, he did that thing with Line 6 for a minute. I think that kind of left a bad taste in his mouth as well. He did the Alchemist, that was, I believe, a Line 6 made version of his amp. Something along those lines. I can't tell you exactly. But I think he kind of got bit by the whole bad thing a little bit, and now he's just kind of doing a 50-50 on it. As best as I can tell. I don't know much of the history. There's some talk about whether or not he's even still in a company anymore. Obviously he is. And he's not selling these things at a pretty, crazy price. $3,300 for his Ubershaw. And, Marshall's selling their modified Marshall now for $3,600. So pretty good deal, actually, if you ask me. Let's talk a little bit about Divided by 13. Another company I would actually say is more boutique than any of the other ones, to be honest. Yeah, Morgans are cringe. When I actually got to see in one, it scared me a little bit, especially once I started understanding a little bit more about how these things actually should be built. It was out of line. But Divided by 13, I don't know much about their history, but I know that they mostly have Fender and or Marshall based amps, and then they have a couple others that are just a mishmash of the two. Cool stuff either way, but I would go with a Divided by 13 over a Fender any day if I wanted to get a more Fendery amp. That's just my opinion. There's not many problems that you see with these things. I haven't seen too many in the shops getting worked on. So I'd put my money here first before I went, with an actual Fender or something like that. And I'm not pointing out all the different companies out there, by the way. There are literally 100. I find a new one almost every day, it seems. There's always some other company out there that's making a new amp. There's another one called, I can't remember. There was a guy who was reviewing it earlier today. It has like the alien looking like cutout on the faceplate or whatever. I can't remember. It starts with a C, though, I can tell you that. Dr. Z is probably the only company I would say is keeping it as close to boutique as boutique gets these days, with the exception that he has full-on distribution going on. He is UL and CE certified, which means he can sell worldwide. Now, the only reason I say that he's still kind of as boutique gets is he has a pretty small shop. I think it's him and about 5 or 6 other people, maybe 12 people total, that are banging these things out. But he still has some of his design flaws. Some of his stuff is literally just copy and paste, and I think he's even admitted it himself a couple times, where he's just kind of taken this idea from that amp and this idea from that amp. He puts them together, kind of makes it work, and either it does or it doesn't, and he tweaks it until it does. So, I've had 100 of these on my stage over the years. I have a love-hate with them. To me, they're really, really thin and kind of bright sounding. I never kind of got the whole allure to them. To me, they do that country thing really, really well. It's no no wonder why Brad Paisley uses his amps, right? Because they need that twangy kind of really snappy sound, and he definitely excels at that. But again, borderline the idea of, boutique. Let's move on again. So let's talk a little bit about Port City. Now, Port City is, again, one of those kind of companies that started a while ago, create some basically copy heads. They have basically, a Marshall type design or a Fender type design, and they put it in a thing or whatnot. Some of them are a little bit original, but they're not extremely expensive, but they're not cheap. And you can see here, if you look at this, obviously they're set up for worldwide distribution, but at least they don't have the whole CE and UL thing on them. But where was it I saw it? There was one I saw some of the gut shots. Do they show it on this one? I don't think it's this one. Oh yeah, it is this one. Okay, so F&T, love F&T. Now here's why. Again, I'm not a super duper fan of Port City, and this is why I'm explaining that you kind of get away from the whole boutique nature. They do the heater wires technically correct. You should go up and over. That's probably the best way to do it. Whatever. Where things that start to bother me come in is that all of these wires here, they go underneath the amp or underneath the turret board. Lord knows how many coilies they make, and then it comes back out somewhere else. So this wire here goes underneath the board and then shoots back out somewhere else. So there's all kinds of wire underneath this thing, and it's not exactly the right way to do it. I would rather just watch the wire come off the top and see exactly where it goes. All right. So there's a mess of wires underneath there, and they have to in order to make this thing somewhat serviceable and removable. But I kind of feel like if you need to service it, just take the whole damn thing out. Other things that kind of bug me is if you look at the pilot light, it's literally bent up at an angle so that it can clear the power transformer. Right? That kind of stuff there. It's like, no, either design it so it's right and you don't have to do goofy stuff like that, or don't do it at all. Another thing that's kind of a no-no, and it's talked about a lot, is using the transformer bolts as a grounding point. And in this one here, they're actually using one of the posts for the transformer as the safety ground on this thing. A hell of a no-no. This by code, the safety ground in an amp is supposed to be on its own connection. Something like this right here, except for over here, it's supposed to be as near as practical to the input of the power, the AC input. Maybe it's not. I don't know. I can only see. It's weird. It looks like they even might have not even connected one of them. But this is the fuse. I know that. Or one of these is the fuse anyway. But in either case, it's not right. This isn't right. These aren't right. These need to be on their own post, just like this one here is. Other than that, it's great amps. These sound great. There's nothing wrong with the quality of sound on these. So don't get me wrong. I'm just nitpicking where I can nitpick. It's the little things like that, though, I think, that separates the men from the boys. Let's talk a little bit about the men from the boys. Let's look at some amplifiers. We're going to kind of make this a little interactive here. So let's do amp. Let's be more specific. Let's do gut shots. Gut shots. Let's look at some amp porn, all right? So this is kind of where things are going these days with like some of the, I don't know who makes this one, but I mean this is basically modernized versions of the turret board. It's got eyelets on the end to connect the things. It's basically a PCB board with all the parts put in there. But at least all the leads are straight. This looks really, really clean. I like the look of it, but this is how it's cheapified. They're using WEMA. Right now you can get these things for pennies on the dollar. Like, they're super duper cheap. All right. Not the greatest stuff on the planet, but very clean build. Cool, right? Most other amps are doing this kind of thing here, literally on a circuit board. Holy cow. Just absolute no. But what I'm really looking for, here's like a little high watt style thing. Andy Lederman's going to be happy to see that, right? I am not a high watt aficionado. I have a love-hate sort of thing with high watt. I love the way they look. Like there is no denying that they're the most beautiful, looking style of amp build out there. But it's not that it doesn't have its problems, though. I've talked about it in other videos where this one's pretty busy, but there's a lot of wires underneath here that crissy-cross each other and go all over the place, right? And it can cause problems, especially if you don't address it properly. But don't even get me started with matchless. Like, this is, to me, just a hellhole. You can't work on anything in here. This is made by Phil Jameson, but nothing is parallel. Nothing is straight. Everything is just everywhere. They got just... I can tell you right now that every one of these parts right here are wrapped around the turret or the tag board like 3 or 4 times. You cannot work on these things without wanting to pull your hair out. Cool amps, though. They sound cool. I'll give them that. What else do we got here? That's kind of cool. It's like a little pedal build right there. It's on a turret. That's a neat little idea. What I was looking for, I saw it once before. There was somebody that built like the homebrew DIY type build. And oh my god, BC. I've shown this one in one of my other videos. I love this kind of layout here. I know it probably looks a little fuzzy. This isn't the greatest picture, but I love this type of layout. Everything's like square and 90-degree angles and stuff. You could never build an amp like this reliably forever. Like, I'd want to kill myself to do this. I could not do this because I'm anal enough. Yeah, we'll go enough around back on that one. Why can't I find the one I was looking for? Here's another high watt style build. It looks all clean and stuff like that and tidy until you realize how many wires are just hiding away underneath there. Andy Lederman's cussing at me right now, I can tell you. I'm just not going to be able to find it today. Maybe I need to do... I'm going to get more specific. So we're going to go DIY JCM 800. Oh my god, if I can freaking type today. It's cold out in the garage, so I'm kind of just chilly. I'm not on point. Okay, that's kind of cool. Oh, there we go. Something like this. This is what you do not want to do. This is what you do not want to do. Let's open this up in a new tab over here. So, what the hell? That's not what I asked you to do. It's not going to do it. And then I go and close out the freaking thing. Holy hell. You're going to watch me in real time just struggle here right now. So this is what it... Oh, you mother... Okay, anyway, moving on. So this guy right here, if I open image in new tab, what will you do? Oh, I see what it wants to do. Okay, fine. We'll just do this then. And it's going to bring it up on my other thing here. Of course. All right. Look at that. Holy freaking hell. But none of the leads are straightened out. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Bear with me, everybody. It looks like they might be using the wrong type of resistors here for that. I don't know. This is carbon film. These look like they might be metal oxides on the outside there. But those are the, should be the 1 megs for the phase inverter. But look at all this extra length down there. Holy cow. None of the leads were straightened. We got an unused turret over here for some reason. Luckily, he put the values everywhere. Some of these connections could have been done underneath. Whatever. That's beside the point. But you can kind of see just... This is not how you build an amplifier right here. This malarkey down here where he's literally using a speaker wire for something, it looks like, that's no es bueno. You can't do that. If you can try to make it look like this, you can, but see how all these wires cross? I hate that kind of stuff. So I try to make my layouts not do that kind of crap. I'm trying to look for other ones here. Here's another one that looks like it was just thrown together. Not very pretty. This thing isn't even in straight. Things like this bug me. I get scared when I see things like this. And it's like, oh my god, what the hell just happened here? What am I looking at? It scares me. I get scared. I scare easily sometimes. Don't do that, people. You can do better. If you're going to build an amplifier, right, you can do better. Obviously, this is a modernized production here. So you can see it's more or less PCB based. I don't know what company this is, but you can just kind of see. It looks like it was made by DH Gate. So ceramic, I don't like ceramic tube sockets. They're prone to cracking, and when they crack, they can cause all kinds of problems. Here's an old school, looks like a JCM, an actual Marshall. Maybe. That's a lot of wire held up over there. I don't know. I don't like that. That doesn't look good. This certainly doesn't look good either. Ew. I don't know what the hell that is, but that is ew. You want to talk about spaghetti? Don't do that. So where I'm getting at with all this is that when you're going to build your guitar amp, if you're going to do it from a kit, or if you're however you're going to do it, don't do it like this. Make everything straight. Make everything nice. Take the time. Straighten the leads. It's not that hard. You can take 2 pieces of wood and rub them together. Stop it. I know what you're thinking. But you can do better than that. And then, sorry, it's time to top off here. And then just the length of the wire. The objective is to have the length of the wire as short as possible. So again, we're kind of going on like the men from the boys, right? I'm trying to find one that was actually built by a person. This one looks like it might have been, except for this is a PCB-based turret board build. So everybody's going that way. Even Matchless, their modern stuff, and Hiwatt even. Not that the modern Hiwatt is nothing like what they used to be, by the way. It's not even owned by anybody even in the family anymore. So if you buy a Hiwatt off the showroom floor today, it is literally only a Hiwatt in name, not by actual, whatever. So it is so tedious. It is so tedious. But you know what? You have to do it. Like, if you want a really good amp, you have to be anal, retentive about everything. And I'm just not finding what I was looking for. There was some pictures I posted in a video I did a couple years ago that showed a beautiful one. I can't remember. It was like New York amp something or other. This guy made, it's hand wired, but it's absolutely gorgeous. It's done the right way. But this, don't do that. What the? No, come on. That's not right. That's not how you do it. You're going to spend more time and work fixing all that stuff. This is a modulus build here. This is more textbook, I guess, if you will, for what's going on with a modern build of it. I'm still not happy with the way modulus does it, but at least it's better than what most people are plopping out there. Here's one that's kind of par for the course as well. You can kind of see that crap right there. Why wrap it up 10 times? Cut it the length that you need it and get it out of there. But pretty close. Looks like somebody put their name on there. Good for them. And it looks like they somewhat straightened out the leads. They tried to do a good job. It's not bad. I'd say that's up the middle. I can't find the one. I'm not going to find it now. When you're looking for it, you can never find it. When you're looking for it, you'll never find it. What's this one? This is another DH Gate one. Yeah, we don't want that. Get out of here. I'm just not going to find them. Damn it. Oh well. Anyway, moving on. That's enough of that crap. We beat that horse. So, this is what I would consider mediocre. Let's go to the amp guts appreciation. Appreciation. There it is. So now we're going to see the good ones, right? More of the prettier stuff. So, very, very pretty, all right? All the leads have been straightened out. Not the greatest layout. I don't like having leads necessarily this long if they don't have to be, but sometimes to get, obviously all the turrets are kind of on the edges, but you can kind of see they did a really good job here. This is pretty freaking clean. I'm not a fan of ceramic discs. They are microphonic, and when you lay them like this, especially these ginormous ones that are literally the size of a quarter or a half dime or a half dollar, they can rattle against the turret board or whatever else they're resting against. So I'm not a fan of the ceramic disc. Now, I would say that in some designs, the ceramic disc is the only way that you're going to get away with the sound that you need to have, perhaps, but, what is this guy here? Looks kind of like a Hiwatt build. So this one's pretty good. Like, everything's kind of at least laid out fairly straight. It's a good attempt. At least they put some effort into this. And that's the thing, is what we're getting at here is the effort. When you start doing stuff like this, it gets a little weird. This is true point to point for the most part, except for it's not, because they got all these wires just I don't know. It's scary, right? You look in there and you go, "Oh my god, what the hell is that?" um, here's another one that's like, "What the hell?" So this is more of an old school type thing here. Eyelet board. You can see why I'm not a fan of eyelet boards. You can see how it's all warped and warbly. So I wouldn't do that. I don't like eyelet boards for that reason. Another problem with eyelet boards, especially the older style ones that use the wax paper. He said he liked them. Which one was it that he liked? Remind me again. Brad the guitarist. Brad the guitarist. I'm sorry. Said that he liked them. I can't remember. Remind me what it is that you're referring to. Brad the guitarist. I like him too. I do subscribe to his channel. Ceramics. Oh, yeah. No, ceramics are kind of one of those weird ones. They do a thing, right? So like silver mica. I guess there's 3 types that you could use in that type of position. There's tantalums, there's silver mica, and there's ceramic. Ceramic, I kind of feel has kind of more a glassy, kind of screechy, nails on the chalkboard kind of overtone on the top, I guess, if you will. Silver mica is a little bit smoother, but silver micas are also, really, really good at dealing with high frequency content. So they're a little bit smoother up there. And then you've got tantalums, and tantalums are a whole nother beast on, in and of themselves. Tantalums are not very good for guitar amplification, period, but you do see them on occasion. And I think I don't know all the specific details that differentiate each one of them, but silver micas are prone to failure with higher voltages. They don't stand the test of time in that regard unless you really spend the money. CDM, if you get like the Cornell Doublier, I guess is what they're called, is what the CDMs are. Those ones are obviously better quality than the ones that just say SM on them. SM being the one that just literally stands for silver mica. So you want to spend a little bit more money there. Now, ceramics, they have gotten better over the years. There are audio specific ones that you can buy now that have like the that coating on them, or whatever you want to call it, whatever the I don't know, whatever it is that they dip it in to make it look like one of these freaking orange drops here, except for they use that blue color. So they are a little bit more stable in that regard. I think the ceramics are better with heat than some of the other ones. But I'm a fan of silver mica. Where I tend to use them, it's in lower voltage places, and I will use the highest voltage rating I can find for that position as well. Obviously, when you're just doing it over the top of like a voltage pot, or a volume pot, excuse me, it's really not incidental. If it fails there, you'll get a scratchy kind of thing going on. It'll act a little weird. It's easy to suss out, but it's not in a spot where it's going to cause any major problems. I do use silver micas as a coupling cap, but I have another one that goes around it. So even if it does fail, you'll know pretty much right away. So it's easy to fix. It's one of those things where you got to pick your poison. There's so many different options out there, but I would not be using ceramics in the direct signal path for sure. As a sail over capacitor or something like that, or a bright, a treble peaking circuit or something like that, sure, why not? But I'm not a fan of them because they are prone to being microphonic, whereas silver mica is not. And then, of course, silver mica is just a little bit smoother on the top end. That is a me thing. Again, I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just telling you my reasoning for that. And again, I biffed it on really finding anything cool that I was hoping to show, but this is freaking cool. See what I mean, though? Like, somebody took the time to make all these leads nice and straight. I don't think this is for an actual... It's obviously not a guitar amp. Some sort of phono amp, or maybe like one of the... What do they call those things? The CB radios or something like that. But somebody spent the time to really make these things look amazeballs. Do that. Spend the freaking time. Do it right. If you're going to do it right. Right? Makes sense? Don't be lazy. This is kind of, again, middle of the road. So don't do that. Men from the boys, right? Do better, be better. What is this guy here? This looks like another modernized build. Something's PCB based. Even though it's a turret board. Wiring etiquette. Yeah. Wiring etiquette. It is important. I mean, if you're going to do it, at least try to make it look like this. I mean, you can still do this without putting it on a PCB board. I'm not certain as to what this brand is or whatnot here, but you can still do this without, having to put it on this. Like, you can put the wire directly on the thing. Again, they're kind of doing that no-no thing that I was talking about. This wire here, maybe is this one here. It probably is. I don't know where the other green one is for this other one here, but it goes underneath the board. Lord knows how far down. And then it shoots back up and over. This one here, it goes back underneath the board and then shoots back out. Like, there's no need for it. Just get it over there. Do what they did here, right? And I would have used on his signal. So, yeah, I can't get him on that one. But, just come off the top and shoot over to where you need to go. But this looks great. Like, right? You can do this. Anybody can freaking do that if they just spend the time and do it. That's the important part. Somebody was asking me the other day if we could, I can't remember what it was they wanted me to talk about. I'd have to go to my, hold on. We're going to check it out right now. Let's see here. Now live. Hey, what do you know? I'm live. I know, because I was there. I'm trying to go to my thing to see. I'm trying to get all my things in a row. Sorry, I apologize. I know I'm kind of all over the place right now, but I want to go to my community. Bear with me. We're getting there. Do it up. Alright. Of course, I'm not going to be able to find it. Yeah, I'm just failing today on finding what it is I want to find. So, let's get out of here. Ooh. Sorry. My drink's coming back to get me. So I was watching, I did a gig yesterday. So when I'm not doing IT work during the week, I will take on these extra gigs, and we'll go back to this view here, because why not? So when I'm not doing gigs, or when I'm not doing IT work during the week, I'll do, sound gigs on the weekend. I'm kind of gotten to that point where I'll cherry pick, and, that ASMR sip. That's right. I'm all about that ASMR. Get up in there nice and tight like. So I did this gig last night, and I got back in, and Andy Lederman, he was doing a gig or a live stream, and I popped in, and instantaneously everybody's talking about food, and I've not really dieting, but I haven't been eating as much. I've been trying to manage my calories, I guess, if you will. Well, sort of, but I I come in, and they're literally talking about like Boston baked beans and stuff like that, and I was so hungry, and I didn't want to make anything because it was getting late on my, it was it was like 10 o'clock, so I was like, oh man, you motherfuckers, talking about food and stuff like that. Urgh. If you haven't, I'm gonna put you on the spot, Andy. I hope you don't mind. But the other day we were talking, and he was talking about how one of his videos he had a dick out incident, and he had to blur out the spot. I didn't notice it myself, but I just thought it was funny. So Andy apparently is hung like a freaking horse. He walks in the room, and it's just flop, right? He's probably got to be careful if it's looking up at him, because it might be like, so do something. I swear that thing probably must yap at him or something. Me, on the other hand, I wore mine down to a little nub, so don't you laugh at it. But anyway, a hoot and a half. If you really want to have some fun conversation, go check out Andy's live channels, or live streams especially. Some of the most fun I've had in a long time on a chat, for sure, or on a live stream in general. And he talks, of course, he tells you what he thinks about a lot of different things, areas I don't tend to go. But if you want to learn about amplifiers and stuff in general, definitely worth the trip there for that. And then there's some comedy gold in there, so if you like comedy gold, go for it. Mm. So while we're in this view here, and you can see some other parts are now strewn about my table, we may as well talk about them. So you guys already know what this on here is all about. This is the power supply I'm going to use for this box right here, which is going to hold the contents that are splattered about my desktop here. I did go ahead and splurge and buy some other types of things, and I don't, let's see if I can get it to, that might make it a little bit easier to see. So these are the bifurcated, what do you call them? Like turret boards that are meant to attach directly to the tube sockets or whatnot. I think I'm going to try to do something like that where I will, let's get that to go the right direction. I don't know for sure, because I can do, if you wouldn't mind, I'm building something in front of you. I'm literally tinker toying with crap right now. Kind of funny in a way. So let's say I do something like that, right? So I'll have the 3 turret boards kind of in their area there. And then I can run all the parts out that way. I can get the wire. I was talking about the heater wire not running. I had to run it up, down, over, and then up again. I don't really like that. I kind of want to run the heater wire right up the middle and get it done. I like that kind of idea. I think with these two, I can also get it kind of more compact. I'm trying to imagine this in my hand here, but compacted. If you can imagine, you got the tube socket here, and then I got a 3/4 inch, standoff here, and that goes that way, obviously, and then the turret board would attach to it like so, because I want to try to fit it in this box here, which is only 1.5 inches thick. The tube will stick out the top of the box about that much, so just about 1 inch out the top of the box. Not a big deal, not the end of the world anyway. But I'm trying to get it so everything will fit inside of the space of this box here. And I want to use full-size pots. I know that the pots will fit if I use all 4 of them. I did choose a slightly different knob. I don't know if it'll work. The problem with these knobs is you can't see them really because of the freaking lighting, but and this camera's bogus. But the problem with the knobs is they're not big enough to cover where the little tab is on these things, and I like to use the tabs when possible. Here's why I like to use the tabs. A, it keeps the pot from spinning, and I don't like the pot spinning because I'll use an actual tool. Let's see here. Well, I have a couple different tools, but the other one's put away at the moment. But this tool right here, I don't know if you can see it, but it's got it too is kind of like bifurcated. I don't know. It's got like the little tangs on it. You can't really see, but it's got the little tangs on it here, and it's designed to tighten up the threads that I use on the power switch. Well, same for these guys here. I'll use an actual socket wrench on these and tighten them that way. I don't like using, like crescent wrenches or other, makeshift crap. However, anyway, I know that these 4 will fit here, and I'm hoping to get them in this location here. And as you can imagine, having this ginormous thing right here that's going to have to live literally as far down as it possibly can on the bottom of the chassis means that these guys got to live like right in there. And it's going to get very, very, very tight with this thing here if I want to fit it in this box. So going back to the knobs, and again, these pots here with this tab, I would have to use it without the tab, and that means these pots could come loose, and I don't like that. So I may not go with these knobs. I picked these knobs because they are very similar to the ones I normally use. But sorry, I told you guys I'm a little boring. I noticed I lost a couple of you, but whatever. I see you got better fucking things to do than listen to my ass yip, so I'm kidding, of course. People do what they gotta do. So I went with the MOD on this, and I talked a brief little bit about these. These are technically rated better than the F&Ts. Lyle from Psionic Audio likes these. He uses these a lot, and I think the only reason that he really likes these is that they're rated for 105C. Now these are 20% rated. So it's plus or minus 20%, which so are the F&T. So technically these are a better capacitor, maybe as close as you can get to like the Nishikons without being a Nishikon, but I don't like the way they look. If they could have just made them black or gotten rid of their crazy, little logo and the ginormous plus sign, I probably would be more with it. Good price too. Yeah, they are cheaper. These are significantly cheaper. I think I got both of these for $5-6 or something like that, where it was normally cost me at least $9 a pop to get the F&Ts. Now the reason I went with these though is I wanted to use as large as I could, but still be within a normal size. I thought initially I was going to go with the Nishikons in this. For the prototype, I don't want to do that. For the prototype, I'm going to use a normal or conventional one. I figure if I can make it work right with parts I know how they react and work and all that jazz, then it shouldn't be a problem to update later. But I didn't want to go down that path, and I wanted to use 30, and the only way I could get them to fit in this area, if you can imagine, you can't even see it anyway, but if you can imagine, you've got this ginormous pot that takes up capacitor that takes up half the the usable space that you have in this thing. So that's why I went with this guy, because I figure what I can do is lay it on top of whatever I'm doing. So even if I put build them with these guys here, it'll go on the top side next to the pot tube. Excuse me, goodness, I'm talking faster than I could think apparently. But this will make it so it fits up near the top of the chassis, and these are just the smaller ones I can find. Even if I went with a 30 UF of the Nishikon, I would still have to lay it down, and to me that was kind of just yucky. I didn't like the idea of taking an axial, is it radial? I always mix the two up. This is axial, the other one's radial. So the radial mounted, Nishikons, it would lay out like you see this here in this direction, and both the leads come out of one side. And I'd have to literally bend them out directly from the sides of the thing. And to me, that just looks a little goofy, and I didn't really like that idea. So even if I use this guy here, I would mount it on the top like this, and then the remainder of the parts would go on the bottom. Now the objective behind that is to make it so that this guy here or any of the other parts would go down as far into the chassis as I could. I'm trying to get it so you can see the right angle. So basically it either mounts to the bottom and goes up into the top, right? Or objectively it would be better to go the other way, where everything mounts to the top, and when I close the lid on the bottom, there's just this minute amount of space to keep it from grounding out, of course, on the chassis. Obviously I'll use like a protective layer or whatnot, but still the point is to try to maximize all the use of space. I would love to mount the tube sideways, and I think I could possibly pull that off if I went with another type of design. I don't know. So that's the problem, is going with the turret boards. I would have to pick my poison. I think if I mount them off the side here, obviously I got to cut these things down to make it fit, right? Because these are wider than the chassis is. And I could do four turrets widthwise in here, but they have to sit in the middle. Keep in mind, I still have to put a switch in this thing, and the switch comes down almost to here anyway. And then I also have to fit the pots. Now the pots are non-consequential, if you will. The pots are still going to sit down that far. So you can see how there's just not a whole lot of space. So I have to find a way to maximize it all. So I think the only way to really maximize the space is to have the tubes come out the top. I kind of wanted to come out the top anyway. I kind of like that. And then I'll just use the drawer handles to put over the top and protect the tubes. We'll see. I've got a lot of work to do. The hardest part is going to be getting this thing to fit. And as you can see, it's got the barrel here to power it. Objectively, I want to get the input, output, and power on the same side of the thing, but the only way to do that is to put this thing in there in that direction. And as you can imagine, this has the deepest depth this way. More or less the point I'm getting at is that you really have to plan out your builds ahead of time. So for me, in this case here, this is just a test bed, so I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to make all this work. But There's a couple different ways I can do it. I can either put this over here and have the power come in off the side, and I would probably actually put it near the output, so it would be over here or something like that. But again, it would have to be pretty low in the chassis or pretty high in the chassis, which makes it a little bit weird because it wouldn't be in the middle. So I'm trying to get it to come out of the back, but the space that I have is very, very limited. And as you can imagine, if you can imagine, this guy here just barely fits between these two tubes. So if you can imagine this thing here just sitting almost literally like this, it gets a little weird. Especially if you got this guy in there kind of sandwiched in between it. Because that is essentially what it would look like, is kind of that. So I don't know. I don't know how that's going to work. We got some work to do. Obviously, you're going to get to see all that, but we're talking about it here. So, you know. A little more ASMR for you there. So now you can kind of see what the challenges are when you're just trying to design these things. There's so much to think about. It's not just building a circuit. It's literally building a circuit and finding a way to make it fit in the box and how to make it look nice, because you don't want to have this other crap up here that we saw earlier where, you know, everything looked like hell, because that is some bull crap. You don't want to have a crappy built amp. So does anybody have any questions that they would like to ask? I see that there's 11 of you. I'm starting to lose some of you here, but I think we've kind of talked about everything I anticipated. So I was hoping you guys would be a little more interactive. Help me out here. Throw me a freaking bone. I'm not that freaking funny. So, you know. So yeah, another option that I thought about too was, because this thing is so freaking huge, is cutting this down one row here, and so I can make it smaller. The holes, interestingly enough, line up exactly the same on here up the middle as they do. So I could literally take this guy, drill out one of these holes to fit this guy in there, and do it this way and build everything on this guy. Thought about that. I don't know if I'm going to do that. So much to think about. Let's plan on calling it. I think we've kind of gotten to everything here. It's been, I don't know, how long has it been? Just about an hour, a little over an hour. Jesus. I didn't think I was going to get quite that far, but so what we learned: small company, highly specialized services, products. What does it mean? It doesn't mean a whole hell of a lot these days, especially since you got companies like Boutique Ant Distribution freaking really literally screwing it all up. There's companies on there that were never boutique to begin with and certainly aren't boutique now. Diesel, yeah, maybe used to be, but certainly not. Soldano, Ignator. Bruce Ignator did sell his company, by the way. It is this Ignator that you see here is not him. I think it kind of went to this direction right around the time he started coming out with the Tweaker series. I think right around then is when he kind of gave it up. So I don't think Bruce is actually producing amps anymore under his own, by himself. So when you buy an Ignator amp, it's not Ignator anymore. It is literally made by a company out of China and sent to you, yada, yada, yada. Same with Soldano. Soldano is no longer being built by Soldano. It's not being done in LA anymore. It's being done by a factory somewhere in China. The littlest hobo theme. Right? Morgan, again, not made by hand really anymore. They're using the eyelet PCB board things. Tone King, man, I'm not a huge fan of Tone King. Obviously, they're kind of doing the exact same thing as Friedman, except for they're more Fender based. So basically, you got the Fender based and the Marshall based two here, and then you got Bogner, and I think they kind of split these things up this way to, highlight that. Bogner, obviously, we talked about him. He puts the cock in peacock. Definitely one of the flashiest dudes out there. Now, Brian Wampler, he is truly boutique. I remember when I was a kid in the 90s, I was going through threads and posts and stuff like that, and he was on the thread showing how to build these pedals, and he had design ideas and all this stuff. He is truly an old school cat. Now, Josh with JHS pedals, Josh is a little bit different. How do you explain it? What would you call it? I would say that Brian Wampler is the Gen X that figured out how to make it work in a Gen Z world. Whereas Josh is like the millennial that figured out how to make it work in a Gen Z world. We're kind of in the Gen Z world now. Us Gen Xers are getting outmoded. And of course, I was pointing at the screen over here, and you couldn't see it. So let's back up a little bit. So again, just to recap: Fender, Friedman, Fender, Tone King, Friedman, Marshall. But Brian Wampler, again, getting back to him, been around for a long time. His stuff is truly cool. I mean, there's only one way to get a $99 pedal to you. And all these other pedal manufacturers out there are all doing the same thing. It's fixed format is what I call it. If it's got 3 knobs in the pedal, all of them are going to be either $99 or $150 or $300, right? Like, it doesn't matter what company you go to. If it's got 6 knobs on it, it's going to be $300. If it's got 4 knobs on it, it's going to be $200. If it's got 3 knobs on it, it's going to be $150, right? Wampler's not much different anymore, but he still is cool in that regard. Now, JHS has kind of gone down the same way. He's figured out how to appeal to the Gen Z nation for sure. But both cool cats. I really appreciate both of them, and I think they make cool pedals either way. I own a few Wampler pedals. I don't own any JHS pedals yet. I'm not a huge pedal guy. I used to. I'm dating myself, but my very first effects board or multi-effects board was a Zoom 2020. So we're talking mid 90s, I think, is when it was at its heyday. I couldn't afford to get a 3030 at the time, or whatever the hell they had, the 4040. So I got the 2020, and I think I still have it somewhere. Maybe I still have it tucked away in my attic or something like that. But I sold it. Here's the interesting story about my Zoom 2020. I owned it, and at one point I was just like, this thing's dumb. I don't need it anymore. I stopped using pedals, so I sold it. And then about 5 to 10 years later, I can't remember exactly how long it was, but it was a significant amount of time. I go into this music shop nearby where I live. Let's see if we can even find one. Hold on. Let's really make this story have some value. Zoom 2020 is what we're looking for. So Zoom, not Zoom. Oh my God. There we go. Sorry. Typing with one finger is hard. That's probably the one right there. Who knows? So yeah, this guy right here. This was my first effects board. And it got me through quite some time, but I sold it. And then 5-10 years later or whatever, I go into this music shop and there's a Zoom 2020 sitting there. And I was like, hey man, I want to check that out. And sure as shit, it was mine. It was mine. I was like blown away. I was like, somebody in my area bought the damn thing, and then however many years later put it back in the same damn store or something like that. I think I picked it up for like $30-$40 or something like that. It was super stupid cheap to get it back. It had the same, like the Velcro that I put on it on the bottom was still there, the whole nine. I don't think it looked like it was never even used again. So I think I have it somewhere. Doesn't matter. But I started trying to use, after that point in time, I started trying to use like the multi-pedals and stuff like that. So I built, this was literally before the advent of the pedal board. They didn't have like these ones that you can buy now. Let's see here, pedal board. They didn't have these Diodarios and these freaking, T80s and stuff like that, or the Voodoo Lab stuff. They didn't have anything like that. When you wanted a pedal board, when I was a kid, you made one. Literally, you had to make the damn thing. So I made like a little wooden box that was wedge shaped. I put a power strip in there and I connected all of my things. They didn't even have power supplies. It was literally either just a, they did make the multi connectors so you could take and daisy chain stuff, but you took a wall wart and you plugged it. It was almost literally 1-to-1 on these things. But I started running into problems. I went with that route. And I started running into problems with pedals or the interconnects. So at that time, the interconnects, like the little short patch cables that you would use, were full on sized right angle plugs that were put together just like any other, like the cheap ones that you can buy. Let's just see here, and let's go right angle guitar cable. Yeah, right. Let's see if it shows it. Let's go to images. Let's see if I can win on this freaking one. Yeah, it looked like these, right? Literally this style right here with a freaking 6-inch cable in the middle. They were freaking horrible. Do not do it. It's horrible. Just get the ones that are more designed for that kind of crap. Get the more lower profile ones. These things killed me. I started running into problems. I'd be in the middle of a show and all of a sudden things would start crackling and popping, and it killed me. So I finally got to a point where I was like, you know what? If I cannot get the sound that I want out of the amp that I'm playing through, then I don't want the amp. And the very first tube amp that I bought, I'm about to blow your fucking mind right now, the Blue Voodoo. I owned a Blue Voodoo, a Blue Doo-Doo. So a little bit of a story. This is the first gen right here. I had a Blue Voodoo 120. It was a BV 120. Looked just like this, in fact. So this guy right here is what it exactly looked like. I got the half stack, the whole thing, right? And that's actually what kind of inspired the look of my current amplifiers today, is this kind of whole thing right here. So I bought the amp. You turn it on, you see this orange glow in the back, and then they had the mirror. The mirror in the back was literally like that Mylar, what do they call those blankets that you can get for, like, survival blanket? It was like the survival blanket, that, Mylar material that's kind of like mirrorish. They literally stapled to the back board. Absolute crappy looking, horrible. But it worked. It was a cool amp at the time. Like, I only had 3 choices. I went to a music store, several actually, but I went to Guitar Center, and they had the Crate Blue Voodoo. They had the Marshall Valve State, and there was one other. It was like the B52. This was in that era when Friedman and Ignator were working together, and they created the B52 or whatever. So I had those 3 options in my short list, right? And I definitely wasn't doing the B52. Too cheap, way too cheap. The Valve State was a little more expensive than the Blue Doo-Doo. And the only reason I didn't go with the Valve State was because I wanted an all-tube amp. I was tired of running with solid states. I had a Crate, like, I don't know what it was called, but whatever their solid state chorus stereo fucking one that they had at the time was. And it started to crap out on me. So I was still into the whole Crate thing, and Crate was still made in America. SLS Electronics is what they were under, but, or SLM. I think it was SLM. Whatever, it doesn't matter. And then I went to this other music store where they had a JCM 900, not the 800. It was a 900 or a Mesa Boogie. The Mesa Boogie was way out of my price range at that point in time. I like the sound of it. I'm kind of glad I didn't go that way, because I probably still have it today, and it would be, if not on fire, I would want to take it out back with my shotgun and blow it to pieces, because I know it wouldn't be working at this point in time. But the JCM 900 at the time was too expensive for me. I couldn't afford it, because I was looking to get the whole stack, right? I wanted the head and the cab. I wanted this. And I couldn't afford it. So I ended up going with the Crate Blue Doo-Doo. And this got me along for quite some time, until I got my PV Triple X. Now, I got the PV Triple X with the frickin', hold on, we gotta see it now. Let's just do XXX. Let's see what we get. I got this version here. So mine's a 2003 model, I believe it is. I'm pretty sure it's a 2003. Now, I have done away with the little trucker girl thing. This is now my back plate, and then I took the back plate and put it on the front, and they don't show the back plate anywhere, because why would they? It's on the back, right? You don't ever see that stuff. So anyway, I took this off the back of it, put it on the front, and then I put a mirror on it. So going back to the kind of the Blue Voodoo thing and how my amps are kind of inspired by it, I really like that idea. So what I did at one point was take that blue voodoo and I took out the little bulbs in the back and replaced them with blue LEDs. So you could see the glow of the tube heaters, and you could see this faint blue glow through the hole of the amp. And then I put another blue LED underneath each of the tubes. So they had this nice blue glow everywhere. And then I put a real mirror in the back of that amp. And that real mirror really set it off. And that was like, oh, okay, this is cool. And then when I got the Triple X, I did the same thing. I put this thing, moved it to the back, glued a mirror to it, and then I took the screen that was on the back, put it on the front. I didn't put any lights in this one. Now, the Crate Blue Voodoo was a cool amp. Sold it to somebody. I don't know. I have a video of it somewhere, I think on YouTube somewhere, but yada, yada, yada. Anyway, this guy here has been in my stable now for long time at this point. It actually has been around long enough now that I need to do a capacitor redo. I need to redo all the power capacitors in it and stuff like that. So maybe one of these days. But that is how I came up with the aesthetic that I got, is to copy it. It's literally from the Crate Blue Voodoo. Imagine that. A piece of shit amp I freaking finally get somewhere with. So, yeah. What is my whole idea about amp building? Clean. I like freaking clean. Just practical engineering. That's it. This is practical engineering. I like straight lines, right angles, and just practical. I like things to lay out the way it's supposed to lay out. So that's all I can say about that. I don't have all the stuff on this computer here to show you what I've got going on, but if you look at my channel, let's go ahead and we'll just look at my channel. If you want to see gut shots of my amps, you're going to have to go to here. And if you start down at the bottom here, you can even see some right here. So that you can see some of my work here. You can see my layout ideas in this one. This is the one where I show how not to build an amp. I got all the pictures that I want to show you in there, like they're supposed to be. But you can kind of see how I do it from scratch. This amp right here is known now as the Grey Goose. When I call it the Grey Goose, so what I do after I build an amp is I send it out to somebody. And I'm losing you guys quicker than anything. That's okay. I know I'm boring. I'm not an exciting person, so whatever. We're here to do a thing. So what I like to do is when I build an amp, I will send it out to a couple friends of mine who are brutally honest and will tell me what I need to hear. So they got one of the gentlemen that got this amp really, really loved it. And he says, yeah, this is like Grey Goose. It's like top shelf, right? That's kind of his whole thought by it. And he calls it the Grey Goose because it's obviously just gray. And he was the only one who was like, dude, you got to have an IEC. That's the reason why this one has an IEC. Because all my other ones use the, I don't even think you can see it in any of my pictures, but this guy here uses the True One connections. The True One connectors are just light years away, or light years better than anything the IEC stuff is about, right? So whatever. Anyway, you can go through these videos, you can see how I build them, and you can kind of get the gut shots that I got going on, because they're not unsimilar to what you see here. You're probably bored of the 18 watt stuff, but this one here is a little 5 watt build that I did. The whole thing, it goes through how I made the cabinet, the back plate, the whole 9 yards. This is a cool freaking little amp. I'm super stoked with it. I'm glad that my buddy was able to buy it. So this guy here went to an auction, and it didn't go as well as we'd hoped. I kind of knew it wasn't going to go that well, so my wife put me up to it. I was doing well, I wasn't doing anything. My wife was involved with something, and they were looking for like auction items, and the wife is like, oh, my husband builds amplifiers. He will provide you one of these. I enjoy your content. Very insightful. Oh, well, I appreciate that. Thank you. I know I'm not super duper exciting. I don't tell a whole bunch of funny stories and stuff like that. I don't have the dick out stories like Andy Lederman has. But maybe one of these days I will get a little more free and loose like that. But for now, no. But yeah, so I did it. I built it, and I knew it wasn't going to be good because who on this God's earth is going to try to buy a guitar amplifier made by some dude in town for top dollar, right? They're just looking for something that they know, like a bicycle or TV or, some vacation trip. It's always a freaking vacation trip that goes for stupid amounts of money, right? So I put everything I had into this build. Like this amplifier easily cost, $1,000, $1,500 just in materials to, create. Right now it's loaded with a Celestian Gold. That speaker alone is like 300 freaking bucks. The speaker almost costs more than all the parts required to build the amp itself. But in either case, I digress. My buddy was at the auction. He bought it. I think it sold for like 600 bucks. It was almost an insult, but because he won it, he gave it back to me so I could keep featuring it and, utilizing it on my channel and whatnot. So I appreciate that. It's nice to have good friends, especially ones that will buy your shit for you. I don't really have any investors, so I had to build this thing out of pocket, and it was kind of like when it goes for 600 bucks, you're like, man, I easily spent $1,000 just on parts on that thing. Are you fucking kidding me? No, you're not getting it. So you can see that one. And then I kind of went to this format after that, as you can see. So I don't really show a whole hell of a lot. This guy right here, the Purple Hazel, that one kind of chronicles this whole build. So definitely go through that if you want to see some of the gut shots. Yada, yada, yada. So there are some gut shots in here. It kind of gives you an idea of what I'm all about. And obviously, if you look at this one here, you can just see I do clean wiring, right? Everything's pretty nice and tidy. I like it nice and tidy. This is not how my production amp would go, though. So keep that in mind, that the way this thing is laid out is not exactly as it is in the Purple Hazel. The Purple Hazel is actually the production build, so the way that it's laid out in this amp is more akin to what it would be if you were to purchase it. So do keep that in mind. But you can see I did hand build the whole cabinet, and I kind of chronologue all of that as well. Freaking absolute pain in the butt, but you can kind of see here all the parts coming together for that. I have decided at this point, let's talk a little bit about transformers. Transformers are a pain in the butt. Let me tell you, there's a lot of choices out there, and they're not cheap. So it's not like something you just go out and buy 5 of them from 5 different companies and test. What I can tell you is that depending on how much you want to beat up on the transformer, they all pretty much sound the same-ish. So the original 18 watt that this thing is built off of, it came with the Chinese transformer set, right? The output transformer being probably one of the more important ones for the end of the line sound, right? It just kind of dictates how the amp might actually sound, right? Well, the amp sounded great. There's no doubt about it. The amp sounded great after I built it. Turned it on the first time and everything went click, and next thing you know, I got sound coming out. So I was blown away with that, but then I started modifying it because it did a thing, but it didn't do the thing. And I mentioned this in my other video, one of my other videos, but it did a thing, but not the thing. And that was the thing that kind of bugged me the most about it, was that it didn't do what I wanted it to do. So the first thing I did was like, well, you know what, maybe throwing a different transformer in there will make it sound better. And at this point in time, Classic Tone was still in business, so I bought a Classic Tone transformer. I can tell you right away, I replaced it. I was instantly bummed because it didn't sound any different. So the cheap $10 China transformer made with plastic, insulator and all that crap, or whatever you want to call it, versus the American-made Classic Tone with the paper insulation and all that jazz, did not sound any different. And then I went and bought a whole different one. I bought the Hammond version. The Hammond one, put it in there, same. Did not change anything out of the sound of that amp. And that's when it kind of dawned on me. It's like, okay, well, I can really go for broke and spend the $300 or $400 or whatever it would cost to get the Mercury Magnetics one oof, I don't know that I can do that. It's for it to be that little of a difference between the first three, even in cost alone on them. Like there was no way in hell I was going to spend that kind of money to find out that it didn't sound any different. And it wasn't, again, it wasn't that the amp sounded bad. It was literally my own curiosity that was driving me to check that out. Power transformer, or yeah, the power transformer side of things, same. I got one that came with the, the China built one. That's in my prototype. Sounded fine. I bought the Hammond one. It sounded the same. There's nothing different. So the power transformer didn't do anything different. Yada yada yada. Down the line, I realized that Hammond is making as good of a transformer as you can pretty much get at a price that most of us can afford. So Hayboer, kind of the same. For me, it comes down to the aesthetics. The only reason I would consider buying a Mercury Magnetics transformer at this point is the aesthetics. They look the part. They look finished. They look complete. They are beautiful in their completion. And that's the part that drives me to wanting them. If I could get past the whole, well, you got to buy X number of these things before we'll give you a normal, I'm using my quotation fingers, a normal price. I can't do it. I can't justify that yet. Maybe if I can work out a deal right off the bat with them or something like that, I'll go that route. But because I'm 99.99% positive that no matter which of these amps that I throw that transformer in, it's not going to make so much of a difference that it goes from sounding like doo-doo to making it sound like God's gift to amplifiers. And my amps sound pretty freaking good as it is. So if it only goes from sounding damn good to sounding damn good again, I can't justify that, extra $200 cost on some of that stuff. So I don't know. Point of diminishing returns is a big thing, I think, in a lot of stuff. And going back to what separates the men from the boys, the guys that are building the highest dollar stuff are using the highest dollar parts, generally. So, we're talking like Victoria amplifiers. We're talking, not Head First. What's the other one? I think is it Head First? What's that other Headstrong amps. So Headstrong makes mostly Fender-based designs, and they use Jupiters and stuff like that, and they use more traditional. Let's just go ahead and drag them up and show you. So we're gonna go Headstrong. Let's go images. Let's see here. Yeah. So this is one of the images I showed. More traditional. They're using the carbon composition and stuff like that. They're using the braided pushback wire that's probably solid core. Very traditional built. They're still doing it on eyelet boards and stuff like that. But it looks like they're using Mallory. Maybe it's not Headstrong that I was thinking of after all. What was the other one? Maybe it's Milkman I'm thinking of. Not Milkman. What's the other one? I don't know. It doesn't matter. There's one of these companies out there. It's either Milkman, Headstrong, or something like that. They're using the Jupiter brands. And obviously the amps are pretty expensive at $3 or $4 grand a pop. But they're using the highest dollar cost parts you can possibly get. They're probably using Mercury Magnetics and stuff like that. There's a company out there right now that's using that speaker from, I think it's Celestion, or is it Eminence, that has like the dial-a-tone thing on the back. So you can turn this dial on the back of the speaker and it actually dampens the volume or something like that, or changes the volume. So it's like having a built-in attenuator, but they do it at the speaker. And I think literally what that speaker's doing is changing the flux strength of the speaker. So, you put 10 watts in and you literally only get 1 watt worth of energy out. That sort of thing for it, right? Maybe not. I could be wrong, but that's the idea behind it. Extremely expensive speaker too. I think those things are like $300 or $400 a pop or something like that. I think Brad Paisley might be using them. They got this small artist list on there about who's actually using it, but whatever. They're using top dollar parts, right? So when you go to something like Port City, they're using the let's see if we can get a shot of it actually. I mean, they're using, looks like the Mallory 150 series. Absolutely nothing wrong with that series. They're one of the cheaper capacitors out there. I think they're like, what, $3-4 a pop or something like that. It's not bad. The Sozos, I like to use the Sozos. They're not the best. They're not the worst. They're far from the worst, right? You can get the $1, generic brand, and I think they sound honestly pretty dang good. Um, let's just check that out too, because we're here. We're going on a run. I thought I was done with this freaking thing, but I guess I'm not. Let's go capacitors, because why not? So yeah, the Mallory's, $1.25, whatever. 65 cents for some of these. That's crazy cheap. And then of course the F&Ts start just expensive, but do they even have? I do not. This is a me thing. I do not like the orange drop stuff. I've already heard enough about the bad things of the 716 series. I think the 715 is the one that everyone is most interested in. I don't know what the difference is. All I know is that I'm not a fan of the whole orange drop thing. The only major reason is that I don't like the format that they're in. So again, they do have a sound. I'm not particularly crazy about the sound, and it's not so much of a difference that it matters that much, but the format is what kills me. They're actually mounted, so the leads come out the side, or more radially mounted, actually, I should say, because the leads go straight down, which means that you're always bending the leads out to the sides. The second reason is that they're overtly larger than any other bulbous and rappy. I've heard that they're more bright. They're brighter. They got this high-end thing going for them. I cannot say that I've actually done an A-B comparison 1-to-1 in any of my amp builds where I build it entirely with this and entirely with another one. I cannot say that I've done that. What I can say is that my experience over the years with these different amps that have had them is that there is a sound that is somewhat associated with them. And I know that the 716 series has gotten some flack. But the biggest thing that I have against them is the size and the mounting, the way that they mount. They're just overt more than anything. I like the Sozos, Sozos. They're expensive. They're not cheap, but they're not stupid expensive either. Like I don't even know if they have them here, the freaking Jupiters. Maybe they do. I tried the Vishays. Now, the Vishays are obviously kind of cheap. They're affordable. They don't sound bad. They do have a sound. It's not bad, though. There's nothing wrong with the Vishays. I've said it in another video before. Pick one, go with it. If you want the orange drops, go with the orange drops. If you want the Vishays, go with the Vishays. If you want the Mallorys, go with the Mallorys. And if you want the Sozos, go with the Sozos. I've built an amp entirely with these ones here. My prototype is actually built with these generic ones. It sounds great. It's the one that made somebody want to buy my amp, in fact. He played it, and he's like, holy shit, this is amazing. I want you to build me one. And that's what the Purple Hazel ended up being from. Now, obviously, I built a couple other amplifiers before that. If you recall, the Purple Hazel is number 4 in my build list for that particular amp. So, again, the capacitor or the resistor that you use is not going to make or break the amp. It is a thing, and I'm showing you nothing right now. Let's get over to here. Sorry, my apologies. You're looking at my hands, not at the freaking screen. So yeah, going back to the top, we talked about it already. The Mallorys are great. I think they're kind of right now, I'd say par for the course. If you know that you don't want to spend $4 a pop on Sozos and you don't want to use the orange drop style ones, then either the Vishay or the Mallorys are the way to go. Right? Like, there's just no need to look anywhere else. The Jupiters are great. I don't know that they sell them here on this channel or on this website. Yeah, they do. Jupiters are even more expensive. The next step up. I don't think they're any better than anything that the Sozo line is offering. That's just a me thing. So just overtly expensive to me. That's it. That's the end of the line. That's all it comes down to. So they've got these audio filer ones. I don't know. I've never used these ones. Obviously they got the MOD stuff, the oil filled. There's a thing about oil filled. I'm not sold on it, and obviously they're a little more expensive than they probably need to be for what they are. I don't buy into that kind of crap. These are the cheaper. Oh, these are the radial leads. So yeah, I was right. So yeah, radial is the ones that go straight down. Either way, whatever. These are the CDE. Are these actually the CDEs? Are these the Cornell Doubliers? At 235, they probably are. Let's see. Let's take a look here. Let's go in here. Yeah, they do say CDE on them. Or CDM. Yeah, okay. So they actually sell the Cornell Doubliers. Looks like they don't even say. But they're not the SM. Yeah, no, I just saw it. Darn it. Cornell Doublier. So this one here, if you're going to buy silver mica, do these ones. They only recently started putting these in their stock. These didn't used to be here months and months ago. When I was buying, where are they? There they are. When I was buying SMs, I was buying these guys here. They only have a couple options, 250 or 500. These are the ones that I would use, and then I would use the SM model ones for the other spot. Now that I know that they got the CDEs, the Cornells, I'll probably buy those ones. So, whatever. Since we're here, might as well just keep going down the list. Let's talk a little bit about the resistors. Carbon film, I went over this in a video. There's nothing wrong with carbon film. You can build an amp all day out of it. It will sound amazeballs. Get the highest wattage that you can that will fit in the space that you're utilizing. Usually 1 watt will kind of do it. Do not use them in the power supply. You can use them everywhere else though. Nothing wrong with carbon film in that regard. They are a little bit noisier and they are a little less tolerant to time and heat or temperature. Carbon composition. I am not a fan. This is a me thing. Carbon composition, do not ever buy a half watt. You must buy at least a 1 watt carbon composition or the noise will be a thing. Carbon composition is the noisiest of all the resistors out there. They are the least tolerant to time, which is to say that they drift in value up or down. And of course, they always have the highest tolerance range. So if a carbon comp is a 10%, one of these guys here is usually going to be a 5%. Whereas if you buy a metal film, it will be a 1%. So talking about metal film, 1% tolerance, a 1/4 watt metal film resistor will be 10 times quieter than even a 2 watt carbon comp or even a 2 watt, carbon film. So if you want the absolute most quiet amp that you could possibly get, then you're going to want to go with metal film. Now, there are people that will swear on their grandmother's grave that carbon composition is the only way to go. It is the mojo of all tone to make your amp sound good, right? I'm here to say bullshit. It's just not true. It does have a difference in sound. Whether or not it's a mojo, I couldn't tell you. I have not had any good experience with them. The problem that I have with them is that they drift in time. So over 10 years of time, it's already got a 10% tolerance, but let's say you get 100K. That means it's going to be either an 80K or a 90K, or 110K. You never know. But let's say the temperature goes up 10 degrees and maybe it shifts even more. Usually it goes up in value with higher temperatures. So it goes from 110K to 120K, let's say, when it's 100 degrees outside. And that's just with temperature. Now let's take time into the equation. Let's say 20 years from now, it's drifted even further up or down, usually up. But let's say now, 20 years down the road, this thing is reading out at 150K. It's a 100K resistor. It should never be at 150K. I intended for it to be at 100K, right? So that's the idea with that. So the next best thing that obviously does just as good a job, still has some of that mojo, if you want to call it that, is these 1 watt carbon films. Carbon films still have some of the downsides. They're not as temperature stable, and their tolerance is not as good as a metal film. Metal film, temperature stable, more temperature stable. That's to say they don't drift as much when the temperature goes up or down. And then over time, they're, time stable, which is to say that over 20, 30, 40, 50 years, the chances are, if it's a 1% tolerance, if you bought 100K now, 50 years from now, it's probably still going to be 100K, right? So there's that. Now, again, the difference in sound. Do they sound all that different? I cannot quantify it. I cannot quantify it. Sure, maybe if you have an amp that has 100 freaking resistors in the signal path, then yeah, sure, every little one might make a difference, and it can add up over time. Most of my amps are much, much simpler paths where I think my 18 watt literally only has 10 or 12 components in it in the signal path, and most of them aren't resistors. Most of them are like volume knobs or a capacitor or something like that. So when you have a really, really low part count between your input and your output, a metal film really isn't going to affect it that much. Not so much negatively or positively that you can't tune it out, right? So I don't really buy into the whole this is the best, this is the worst thing. Pick one, go with it, find what you value the most. If you think this is the end all be all to the god of tone, then go that way, and you're going to have the noise and things are going to move with the temperature. You're going to play in the wintertime outside and your amp's going to sound one way, and you're going to play outside in the summer, and your amp's going to sound a different way, right? If you don't have a temperature controlled studio, same. It might change from hour to hour, who knows? Now, when it comes to the power supply, there are really only two resistors that you can go with, either metal oxide or wire wound, right? So wire wound is the closest thing to a true resistive source as it comes, which is to say that it doesn't change the sound, it doesn't do anything. It's got its tolerance, but it's the most temperature stable, the most reliable. All it does is take current and turn it into heat. That's it. Literally, that's what it does. It is the most perfect form of resistor that you can get. But they don't make them in, 10K values or whatnot, usually. These ceramic wire wound ones are usually used in high power situations where you're just trying to send a bunch of current through them, and they need to dump that current away as heat, right? That's what they do. So the next best thing from there is to go with, these are metal film, don't go with that, but they call them power metal film. That might be acceptable. I don't really like metal film in the power supply. Metal oxide is the next best thing to wire wound for the power supply. Two reasons is that it's very much close to this here in terms of how it works or how it functions. These ones do not, and we're talking about the metal oxide here, burst into flames. Neither do the wire wounds here. These ceramic ones, they just kind of get really hot, turn brown, and then crack. And then when they crack, they usually break the lead and things cease to work. All right. Same with these. If they get too hot, they turn brown, the color of the bands burn off, and maybe it just splits in half. But it does not go up in a flame of glory. Whereas a metal film, carbon composition, did I say metal film? Excuse me. Metal film doesn't typically go up in a blaze of glory. It gets really hot, it burns up, it smokes, and then it splits apart, and that's the end all. These are usually flame retardant, if you want to call it that. Carbon comp and carbon film, those ones go up in a blaze of glory. When they get hot, they do darken, and if they get any hotter, they will literally go up in flames, and they will take out everything that's around them with it. So if these are on a PCB and it gets hot, it is going to take out the trace with it every freaking time. No ifs, ands, or buts. Same with these guys here. They'll go up in a flame of glory, and anything that's around them is going to get burnt up. And these have a lot of burnable material in there still. So you got to think about how these things actually work. It's carbon composition. Now, carbon in and of itself is not flammable, but the composition is. So the only way to make these things have the resistance that they have is to put a carbon material mixed with some other sort of composition of other materials, which is flammable. That's it. That's literally it. Metal film is a metallized, material that has some amount of resistive property to it that allows you to get the different values. It's less flammable. The next least flammable version is the metal oxide, obviously. Yada, yada, yada. We've beat that dead horse. Now you know why you use these guys, the metal oxides and the wire wounds, in the power supply, the HT rail. Usually you will only use these as the first dropping resistor. So if you're not using a, what's the word I'm looking for? Choke. If you're not using a choke, oftentimes this is what you will have as your first dropping resistor in the HT power rail. This guy's job here is very simple. It's literally to manage inrush current, right? So it controls current flow through your HT rail, and it converts that current into heat. And that's why they are generally larger and ceramic coated or cement coated or whatever you want to call it. For that reason, it's designed to dissipate heat. You will often see these in cathode biased amplifiers as the cathode bias resistor. If you see anything other than this in the cathode bias resistor, be leery. It better be a low power amp. And when I say low power, I'm talking like a 5-watter and anything below 10 watts. Once you get above 10 watts and you start using, dare I say, metal oxide, it gets a little weird. So metal oxide doesn't get up much beyond, I think, 5 watts. I think 3 watts is kind of where they end at. Now, 3 watts is generally going to be enough for any 5-watt amp, obviously. But a 10-watt amplifier, you start skating on that thin red line. Obviously, you could potentially be pulling up to maybe a watt worth of power through your cathodes. Well, a 3-watt resistor in that position is going to start getting pretty hot at that point. So you want to manage that kind of stuff there. And they have the cemented wire rounds. These are pretty cool. I use these for my screen resistors. The idea behind the screen resistor is to kind of be a fuse, if you will, without being a fuse. It is meant to control current in the screens. It is also meant to control the power through, it's meant to set the power that flows through the tube itself, because the screens have a large effect on that. But the type of resistor you use is non-incidental realistically, because there's not like huge amount of wattage flowing through it. But if you can imagine, if your screen's short to your plates, right, your plate grid or whatever, obviously that's going to cause a huge problem. And the hope is that this resistor will get so hot so quick that it burns up and it saves your output transformer from going into blow-up mode, right, or melting down. Realistically, you don't need to go super crazy. 3 watts is probably too much. 2 watts is probably ideal, and 1 watt is probably the lower end of where you should go. I generally go with 3 watt. I don't generally go with 5 watt. I generally go with 3 watt. That's kind of the end of the line. Mainly because you do want it to burn up if you do end up in that scenario, because it could save your power or output transformer from going into thermal meltdown. Could. But I don't, and most other people don't, like the idea of utilizing a resistor as a fuse, right? It's not what it's meant to do. There's no guarantee that it will do that. But there are just different strokes for different folks. I like the Ohmite wire wound series. I will use these whenever I can if they are in the values that I need. They just recently started stocking these as well, and you can see here they don't get very large. 1K is about as big as they get for these Ohmites in the typical places that you could buy these things. So I've also gotten these as well, these Wellens. This is a 7 watt. Again, I usually just go based on what wattage I actually need. For most cathodes, you don't need anything more than a 5 to 10 watt resistor. So if I can get away with a 5 watt in a lower power amp, I will. And if I know I need more than 5 watts, say I have a 30 watt design or something like that, I'll try to use a 7 watt if I can. Just depends on what's going on. And then, of course, these guys here are the Brown Devils. These are 8 watts. Again, same. I will use these whenever I can. It just depends on the availability and what I need, right? 150 and 250, there's not any in between. I like to get more accurate on my bias, if you will, especially if I'm doing a cathode biased amp. So I will try to see if I can find these things in, less than standard values. 100, 471K, right? Let's see if these ones have any better options. Yeah, this one just has more options. That's it. So it all just depends on where you need to go with it. let's see what else. Browse all products. Let's talk a little bit about, where was it? I was just thinking about it. Not resistors, not capacitors. We kind of did those. I want potentiometers. There they are. So pots. I use the alpha. Oops, sorry. So for the alpha, it's got the best taper, I feel, for amplifiers. I do not like these in guitars. So in guitars, I will use CTS. In amplifiers, I will use the alphas. They have the right feel, and they have more or less the right taper. That's the only reason why. I use the 3/8 inch bushing at any point that I can. I do not like the 10 millimeter style ones that you can find, or the 16 mil. I do not like these small dime sized ones. They do not work. Let's see if I can even find one. Like these guys here. I do not like using these. Oh, my neighbor's home. Should have went out with her. Oh, by the way, my neighbor, she is a rider, and she will ride in any freaking weather out there. It's amazeballs. She's a trooper. Now, I'm a rider as well, but I've gotten pretty bougie in my old age. So if it's not, better than 50 it better be at least 55, 60 degrees out before I get my ass on a bike anymore these days. I used to ride in 30-degree weather. I didn't give a fuck. If it was clear outside and wasn't going to rain on me, I was going to ride my bike. But nowadays, I've gotten bougie. Now, she, on the other hand, she rides no matter what. But in either case, yeah, these 16 millimeter ones, I don't like those. The 10 millimeter ones or whatever, like these, don't like those. It just, some people will go on about like the PEX or whatever those other super high dollar ones are. Honest to God, you cannot beat these. If you're going to build your amp, just get these. These are just fine. Alpha. If you need an audio, get the audio. If you need the linear, get the linear. Trying to find all that reverse taper stuff is very specific to what you need. Get what you got to get. Oh, I didn't see his thing on the bikes. No, I should. I'll have to check that out. I don't have a custom bike, so I'm more of a sport bike kind of guy. My first bike was a Yamaha R6. I got a 2005 Yamaha R6, and if you go to my YouTube channel, you actually see this is my first vlog, and this is on my Ninja 300 that I currently have. But this guy here helped me out. 76 views. Nobody cares about my motorcycle stuff, apparently. Interestingly enough, this one only has 76 views. But this is me pulling out a 2-minute lap over there at Button Willow. So I'm all about the need for speed. So if you're interested in seeing kind of what I do to get that speed, this one doesn't show you much. It's just a bunch of me. But I can tell you in a couple instances, the rear tire is off the ground. There's a couple times where you hear kind of like this chatter coming in when I'm on the brakes. That is actually the rear tire floating on the ground. And this bike doesn't have a slipper clutch, so when you biff it, all right, my man, have a good night. Sleep well. So yeah, if you're interested in that kind of stuff, maybe one of these days I'll do some more. This one here is kind of interesting because I'm just kind of scooting along in one of these roads that I go along nearby where I live. It's called Rucker Road. Some people call it Fucker Road, but it's got some, I do more of the life lessons thing. I'm the luckiest motorcycle rider alive. I have a story. Here's an interesting one. So on this bike here, before I converted it to a track only bike, I used to go out on this road called, well, it's not called, it's the Highway 150 and the 33. So it's out there near Ojai, California. So I went out with this group of friends, and on Highway 33, there is this tunnel. And in this tunnel, it curves from the direction I was traveling, which is, we're going to say I was traveling in the upward direction here. It curves to the left. So you cannot actually see from the tunnel, the end of the tunnel from the front to the back. Like, it's curved enough through it that you can't see from one end to the other. So I'm going through this thing, hauling ass, and all of a sudden I see this bike coming at me from the other side in my lane. So if this is the lane here, I am in the middle of it. I see this guy coming towards me, and he's in my lane. So I start going out to the edge of the wall, And it is a wall, very much so, with a curb right before it. And I've only got about another foot to go before it's, either him or the wall. We came by each other, or he came by me, I should say, because I was in my lane, dang it. I just tensed up and I freaking sucked my elbows and knees in a little bit, trying to brace for impact because it was coming, right? I shit you not. It was like the most perfect brush up of death ever. Our knee and elbow, both of them, touched. And it was like literally like brushing your hands across each other. It was just like that. It wasn't even a clap. It was just a and it was definitely an eye-opener for me. I came out of the other side of the tunnel. Of course, I managed to keep the bike up, which is amazing enough. Immediately parked the thing. My buddy, who was behind me a little ways back, caught up with me at the end of the thing, and he goes, "Dude, are you all right?" And I was like, "Yeah." Like, we freaking almost literally ran into each other. He's all, "Dude, you're white as a ghost," because I took my helmet off by this point in time already too. And he goes, "Yeah, he was still in the other lane when he came out the other side of the tunnel." So this guy spent his entire time in that freaking thing in the wrong lane. Both times, there's another video I took on this bike. I was on the 300 on Highway 33, and as I'm talking, I was doing a vlog. I didn't post it. It was a little too long, and I didn't feel like it. But I'm going around this turn, and I'm talking about how I don't like this turn because there's always a rock or another motorcycle in my lane. I kid you not. Now, we did not touch, but I did have to stand the bike up and move it over. But this guy was clearly in my lane. And I'm just like, are you freaking kidding me? But I called it as I'm literally going through the turn. I'm like, yeah, I don't like this turn because of X, Y, and Z, and freaking Y came up right as I said it. Couldn't have been any better. I don't know. In either case, I love motorcycles. You can kind of see some of my audio stuff in here too. I tried that whole emoji thing or whatever. What do they call these things? The thumbnail. I tried the thumbnail thing. What a pain in the freaking butt. Yeah, I quit. The auto-generated thumbnails that YouTube makes, perfectly fine, by the way. Just saying. Right, damn right. It's freaking scary as hell. Now, of all the incidents I've ever had on a motorcycle, I've only had one accident, and it was my fault. It was right at that threshold too. I used to follow all the statistics on it, but it was right at the 2-year mark, and they say that right around the 2-year mark is when you're going to do it. And that's when I did it. I was following a couple other guys that were faster than me, and they sucked me into a corner, and I don't know what was going through my freaking brain. It was literally like, what are you doing, Luke? Just turn the bike. And I didn't turn the bike, so I yanked on the freaking front brake even harder, which stood the bike up even more than it already was, and I ran off the road. The bike flew out from under me so quick that I landed on top of it, and then I went splat into a freaking like a wall. It wasn't a wall, but it was a mountainside that was on the right hand side of the road. I was making a left hand turn, but yeah, just went against the side of the mountain or whatever, fell back down, ran right over to the bike, which had ripped the front forks off and all this jazz. It was a horrible mess, and there was nobody to blame but myself. That was my first moment, if you will. I made a promise to myself after that. I told myself if I ever get back on the bike again, I will never not turn the machine. And I've lived true to that promise to this day. I have never had an off since then. I have been at a track day once where I was going into a chicane. I was at Willow Springs. I was on the small track, Streets of Willow is what they call it. And they have this thing called the bus stop. It's like this turn that comes up the middle here, and it kicks to the right, goes straight for a little bit, and then kicks back to the left, and then straight again. And they call it a bus stop, right? Well, I was going into this thing at about 120 miles an hour, and I go to make that right-hand turn, so I push on the right-hand bar to make the bike kick over. And right about that time, the right bar breaks off in my hand. So all I have is the throttle and the brake lever literally dangling around in my hand. I was able to complete the turn. I used my left hand to maneuver the bike around through the bus stop, but I was just barely able to get it to stop, on the other side of the bus stop. I managed to get through the whole thing, but That was an interesting one. I've never even heard of the story of a bar breaking off in somebody's hand. So that was fun. Oh, what else did I have? There was one other incident I had where the throttle cable broke on me in the middle of a turn of all damn things. I was at Button Willow for that one. I was going around turn 1, so it's not like the fastest turn on the planet. So maybe at 80 miles an hour, you freaking start to get on the gas and goose it out of there, and all of a sudden, ka-doom, the whole bike just shuts down in the middle of the turn. Not a good scenario, by the way, to have the bike try to shut itself down in the middle of a turn, but we managed that one pretty well too. I don't have that one on video, unfortunately, but anyway, sorry. Going back, we're getting off track here. Potentiometers, just get alpha for your amp. I think you can't go wrong. Yeah, you can spend a hell of a lot more money, but whatever. Now, when it comes to jacks, since we're talking about all this stuff now, I prefer insulated jacks. Do not get these ones here that are uninsulated. You're asking for trouble when you start using these style of jacks here, because the grounding for the jack is to the chassis. The only way that these ones will work is if you actually use the input of the amp as your primary grounding point. We talked about that in, I believe, this video here, or maybe this one here. We talked about grounding schemes or whatnot, or maybe it was this one. I think it was this one, whatever, because it was my yeah, it was this one. Sorry, my contribution. That's the one. In either case, yeah. If you're going to ground at the input, this is okay because you have this right next to where your grounding point is for the input of the amp. If you're not going to do that, do not use these. Do not use these for the power, for the output transformer side of things, or your speaker. Again, not good to ground at the chassis with these. At that point, you want those to be isolated, and you want them to ground where you need them to ground at appropriately. So if you're going to use this style here, then you need to get the oversized thing. These are the rings I use. I was talking about that special tool is for. And I'm sure they're not going to show it in this freaking view here, but they make a plastic ring that goes around these things to insulate these. What's the freaking point when you can just buy these cliff jacks? Now, the only downside of these cliff jacks is they are made out of plastic, which then also means that they're kind of expendable. I don't expect these to last a lifetime. By switched. Oh, so by switched they mean that so usually they're like stereo, like this one here. So when you plug in a jack, it opens up. Yeah, of course they're not going to show the angle on it. Maybe they will. Let's take a look. And let's see. No, of course not. Nope, can't see it. So let's look at this one though, because this one kind of shows it. So see how this is all one piece here, and it goes up and it angles to the left. Well, imagine this jack here on the other side coming up and going in, but stopping right here. Well, this one here is spring loaded and it touches on that jack. But when you plug the plug in, it lifts this thing up, so it no longer touches this side here. So this whole left-hand side of this jack right here, when you plug the cable in, it opens all those connections up. So they no longer make contact anymore with this other side here. So that's what they mean by switched. It can get kind of complicated because even these ones here are switched still. And you can kind of see it a little bit more on this one. Yeah, this angle here is a little bit better for it. Again, you can kind of see it goes up and then it angles over. Well, this other side here stops short of that. And when you plug the cable in, it lifts this one up. You can see that little dimple right there, or that little shadowing, or whatever you want to call it. That is what touches the actual cable or the jack when you plug it in. And it lifts this up a little bit, and that breaks the contact to these. So generally, we'll use these to short out to ground. So when you don't have anything plugged in, obviously all these connections are touching each other. Well, at least each pair is touching each other. And then you can use it to jump across, which means that the tip to ground will be touching then, because these are all in full contact with each other, right? And you can use that to shunt the connection or turn off that connection. That's what they mean by switch jack. Same with this, same principle. And you can do the same thing kind of with, not all of these are the same. This one's actually a stereo jack, but they do make these ones These are open circuit. Yeah, these ones are open circuit. They do make these ones too that also switch, but they are much more temperamental. And I'm probably not going to be able to find one quick enough. But open circuit, yeah. Dang it, they're not going to show it. Anyway, they do make these ones that have a little like switch in them. And what it is when you plug the thing in, it pushes the spring-loaded thing over just enough to pull it away from another tab that they have here that's connected to one of these other leads. And this one may not have, no, it doesn't have it. But in either case, it breaks that connection and opens it up. And it works just like these ones here do, where some spring-loaded thing opens up the connection, and then when you pull it out, it shorts it out because it's now completed that connection. So that's what they mean by that. So in order to keep with, proper grounding practices, more or less, I just say go with the, these plastic insulated ones. Now, going back to where I was before that question came up, so it's like the other, but different. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, very much so. These ones are made out of plastic. So if you gank on the input jack a little too much, these ones break, right? I kind of like that idea because it just gets it out of the way. It breaks and you have to replace it, right? It's kind of like one of those expendable parts that you just kind of have to anticipate. Whereas these ones here, if you bend it, let's say you gank on the phono plug in it or whatever, well, you stand a chance of bending the chassis or just simply bending this lead over to the point where it doesn't work anymore. And most people do not go into their amps and start bending these tabs back. In some cases, you can't even get to them. Like if you're in a thing like this and you do that, you're not going to get in there and bend that tab back if you reef on it hard enough to do that, right? That's kind of why I like this style. This style here is that, it just breaks, gets it out of the way. It's a $3 part and it takes 20 minutes to replace it. It's cheap enough and it learns you to not freaking do that again. Don't reef on your inputs too much. These ones are just easy to work on. That's really what it comes down to. So that's a me thing. I don't know. Not everybody would agree with that. Let's talk a little bit about tubes. We'll talk a little bit about tubes. I'm a fan of JJ. Let me tell you why. I know there's people that are going to look at me and go like, dude, you're a freaking dumbass, right? But JJ has a 33.33% chance of being in your amp right now anyway. There's only a few companies left in the world that make tubes. EHX, which is Electro Harmonics, has a company. It's not actually EHX, but they have a maker for their things. There's Shaguang or whatever it is that, it's based out of China that makes them. And then you've got JJ, which is Slovakian or something like that. The new ones that came out, like the PS Vane, I'm not 100% sure that that's actually a fourth company or a fourth manufacturer. It very well could still be a rebranded tube. So when I talk about rebranded, JJ, EHX, and Shaguang supply all the world's tubes. Fender goes out and buys them. Mesa goes out and buys them. Groove Tubes goes out and buys them. Ruby goes out and buys them. And they mix and match, and then they put their name on it. So there's a 33.33% chance that the tube that you have that says Mesa, Fender, Groove Tubes, Ruby, or whatever other name on there, there's a couple other like Sovtech, etc., right? That it's made by JJ. That's it. So while people like to hate on JJ, their tubes are not that bad. They're a global distributor of tubes for a reason. Now, as an owner of new old stock tubes, and I acquired them from my dad, who had a stash of like old RCA, Bugle Boys, and all those old tubes from the days of yore. Literally, when you can go into Thrifties and buy them for $1 at the time that he was probably buying them, maybe even cheaper. I mean, they used to sell these things for 25 freaking cents. Like it was asinine what they're selling these things for now, considering what they cost when they first came about. But in either case, we're talking about something that's made today with today's standards. Are there going to be duds? Sure, there's always going to be duds. There's some speculation on whether or not certain versions of these tubes, like they're gold versus this or that or whatever, is another type of tube. Yada, yada, yada. There's some speculation on whether a 5AR4 and a GZ34 are the same as what are their 5U4 or whatnot. Like, there's talk about like their 6V6 basically being exactly the same as the 6L6, just in a different piece of glass, right? All that kind of stuff. You can speculate all you want. Tongue saw reissue, right? It's not actually a tongue saw. It's literally probably made by EHX, Electro-Harmonics, and then they put that on there. How on earth can there be a tongue saw reissue? Tongue saw hasn't been around for freaking 30, 40, 50 years. No way in hell. It's Russian made, right? Sure. Okay. So it's probably made by EHX. So that's why I don't put much value in the whole, buying new old stock and whatnot. So when you buy an RCA tube, and I have a few in my hand, not my hand, but in my drawer right now, you are buying a tube that is 40, 50, 60, 70 years of age, possibly, depends. Somehow or another, that thing managed to make it that long and still work. That's the only thing that made that tube even worth owning at some point, right? It's lasted that long on a shelf, and there's no guarantee that it's going to sound good. It just works. There's no guarantee how long it will even last. It just works. That's why I'm not a fan of the vintage NOS tube thing. You're going to purchase it, you're going to spend a lot of money on it, and if you lose it or use it, you will lose it. Period. Hey, AC, how's it going, my man? Yeah, I mean, that's simple. You're going to spend a lot of money on a tube that will end up going away. If you use it, you will lose it. So you might as well just get yourself comfortable with the idea of using a JJ, because why would you not? Right? There's no reason not to use it. So yeah, there's EHX, and there's a couple other brands in here. Mollards. Mollards are made by EHX. This one here, the PS Vane, I'm not sure who makes them. They could be their own company. It could be a rebranded version of this, or the Shagwangs. Do I say that? Shugwang? I don't know how to say it. I'm sorry I butcher it, but these are honestly not horrible sounding tubes, by the way. Most of the three manufacturers that make these things is, they're making the tubes for the world because they're that good. They managed to make a factory and a company last long enough to provide it that way to get set up in that space. So reliability is key. And, like a tube is a light bulb. It literally is a light bulb, period. And you know what happens with light bulbs? If you use it, you lose it. At some point or another, it is going to fail, period. So they are not meant to be lifelong lasting parts. So why would you expect a part that was built 50, 60 years ago to last as long as a JJ? Even if these are made at half the standard that they were then, which I doubt. I think these are made to today's standards, which is a very high level of precision. And, it just invariably with any light bulb, something in there is bound to be not quite right. And it just doesn't quite last as long as you would like it to. That's all. No more, no less. Since these are readily available and somewhat affordable, may as well just use these. That's all. That's my thought on it. Be it wrong, be it right. Now, I'm different than some people. I like using tube rectifiers. So almost all of my amps have a tube rectifier in it. The reason being is I don't like standby switches. Ooh, excuse me, I got the burps. You're welcome. Sorry. Excuse me. My apologies. That was rude. Sorry, guys. Thank you. I know I heard somebody over there say bless you. Anyway, so going on. Where was I? Oh, switches. Let's see. They even have switches in here. There it is. Switches. And I'm going to wrap this up soon. We're going on 2.5 hours, so this has gone on a lot longer than I thought we were going to go already. So I'm sorry. I'm starting to lose people. I've lost about half of you. So I've only got the true troopers hanging with me now. Yellow Jackets. Yeah. Yeah, the Yellow Jackets are cool. Um I I I had this dream of using them before to try to swap out bilge, right? To try and see the difference between like 6v6s and EL84s, and I just couldn't do it. It was like 50-60 bucks for these things, and then you had to buy the tubes to go with it, and I was just like, that's a lot of money. I could just go in there and put the sockets in and build the, just do it that way. And then I started building amps with all the different stuff in it, and I realized like EL84s really aren't as bad as everybody thinks they are, and 6v6s definitely aren't what everybody thinks they are either. They're not like truly baby 6L6s. They are different, and they do react different. So different in a cool way. So when it comes to switches, I like Carling. Carling is a name brand. They're as good as they come. They're a little bit pricier than some of the other options that are maybe out there. Alpha, again, of course, not bad, but I just don't like these phenolics with the Griptons thing. I don't like that kind of build quality. So I've talked about it before. Where is it? Is this the one? No, this isn't the one. I like using the switch, the 15 amp, and it's probably not on this page. No, of course it's not on this page. I don't like this style here, but the little bat style with it's folded over like that. I like using the Carling that is the 15 amp variant, and I like it because when you click that thing, and yeah, right. Oh man, yeah, he's laughing at me. I know why you're going there, Andy. I understand. So he was talking about it earlier today on his channel about YouTube is not receiving enough video to maintain. Shut the fuck up. Keep going. Hopefully you guys are still getting this. I like rectifier tubes. That's just really all it comes down to. Mainly because I don't like using standby switches. And because I don't use a standby switch, the rectifier tube is kind of a nice, easy way to do the slow start thing. So, for me, it's just a way to control that aspect of things. And then it's one more piece of glowing glass that's in the back. I mean, it looks cool, right? I like glowing glass. It's just a me thing. I do have an amp that does use solid state rectification. 2 amps actually that have solid state. Both of them are the 5-watt designs. Probably doesn't matter much in those anyway, but because they're both Class A amps. Class A amps don't pull what do you call it? They don't pull current like your Class A B style stuff does. So they don't sag the power supply in the same way because they're always drawing the same amount of power. And because they're always drawing the same amount of power, the draw that's on the power supply is already there. It's already built in. So when you're designing the amp around that, it's already built into the sound. So there's, you know what I mean? So whether you use rectifier or solid state, it doesn't matter anymore. Now, going to Class AB, it's a slightly different case because with Class AB, it does draw down on the power supply, the HT rail. And using solid state will recover from that faster. It doesn't have kind of the sag or the voltage drop that a tube rectifier would have. And then again, going with more highly filtered, I guess would be the term for it, power supplies, you can mitigate some of that voltage sag and drop. And it just makes the power supply that much stiffer. Again, going solid state with high capacitance makes it that much stiffer, which makes the amp just that much more. It just gives that oomph, right? Not that you can't do it with tube rectification. I'm not doing 100-watt amps. I like lower wattage amps. I kind of feel like 30 watts is the end-all be-all. Much beyond that, you're just trying to build a little bit of headroom and have a bunch of wattage that you may not actually need or use, right? There's some arguments there either way, but knowing the whole power thing, so with wattage, right? Let's say 100 watts would buy you 100 dB worth of output. Hypothetical number, not true, right? Well, if you went to 50 watts worth of power, you would only have 97 dB worth of output. Like, that's literally the difference is 3 dB between 100 watts and 50 watts. Well, now you cut it in half again to 25 watts, let's say. So at 25 watts, you should have 94 dB of potential output. Now, there is some differences in the way that the headroom and, how firm and solid the amp would sound is at those different levels. But between 100 watts and 25 watts, there's only a 6 dB difference, which some would say is almost half the volume. It's not quite half the volume, it's about 2/3, but still. Yeah, right, 300 watt giant tubes. I'm all about glowing tubes, though, come on. So I kind of know that most people do not turn a 100 watt amp all the way up. They're very rarely, if ever, giving the amp 100% of the beans that it has available to give. So, I kind of like the idea that you can turn a 30 watt amp up all the way. You can literally give it all the beans and it will do what it does. So I do tune the amps. I do tune my amps, that is, that if you do turn it up all the way, it does what I want it to do if it is turned up all the way. So I do neuter them down a little bit, which is to say that they don't splat out kind of like a normal amp would that wasn't tuned to do that. Among other things, like there's some things. And then of course the GZ34 is more than able to handle the amount of current flow that size of an amp will deal with. 50 watts and up, I don't think a GZ34 could do it, which is why you have, like Mesa double and triple rectifier amps, right? That's why they do that, is to try to keep up with that current flow that they need at that wattage to produce that kind of output. That's it. That's the only reason why. That's a me thing. It's just a taste. It's all about taste. So, yeah, switches. 15 amp. Get the 15 amp switch. Do not go with the 6 amp switch. You're never pulling that amount of current through it, but it's all about the feel. Oh, that feel. When you hit a 15 amp switch and you clack it, that you flipped that switch. The other ones, like the 6 amp ones, when you click it and it just kind of goes, and you're just like, oh, the amp is on? Is it? Did I actually click the switch? It just went, no, you don't want that. You want one that, rotary switches. I'll talk about that too in just a second, actually. Don't use Z style. I do not like this style. I am a glutton for punishment, and I will use, this style right here? I use this one. This is the one that I use. Very firm. You can barely turn that damn knob unless you have a switch on it. When you turn this switch here, you know that you freaking turned it, because it goes, it's a freaking firm, right? These style here, crap. Absolute crap. I don't like that phenolic crap. So I do use these ones. But yeah, with the 15 amp bat switch, when you click it, you know that you freaking clicked it. That's why I like that. All right. I'm losing you guys. I'm just a little bit late. I'm glad I got the people that I have right here. I like the glow job too. The people that I got right now, I'm happy with. I love you guys. Thank you so much for sticking with me, because this is starting to turn into a run-on show. 2 hours and 31 minutes. Freaking ridiculous. Yellow jackets. I don't use transistors. I don't get it. I'm not that kind of guy. Transformers and chokes. Let's talk a little bit more about transformers. I know we kind of touched on it earlier. I was talking about how just pick one and go with it. I don't think you can buy a bad brand now. Obviously, if you're buying from China, that's maybe a different stuff. More or less, it's going to come down to buying the right size transformer for the job. So obviously, if you have a 100 watt amp, you're not going to be trying to use a 15 watt output transformer. Going with an overrated power or output transformer isn't going to change the game all that much. The transformer does have a little bit of an effect on how things work in terms of sound and performance, but you do want to have that output transformer saturate at least a little bit. So dumbing down a little bit, keeping right at the limit of your power can sometimes be a good thing, depending on what you're looking for. If you want your amp to kind of go that direction. Now, if you don't want it to get, saturated and weighed down by that output transformer, then you obviously want to go bigger. It's not really going to change the sonic quality that much, but if you don't want the output transformer to saturate, then obviously you want to go a little bit higher up on the power scale, if you will. Same for the power transformer side of things. You do not want to get an underrated one. So there are some theoreticals that you can go. I'm not going to pull them up right now, but if you go online and you look at like what a pair or a single EL34 can pull current wise. You know, they usually give you the cathode current or the current off the plate, right? And it's, you know, maybe it's 100 milliamps or something like that per tube. That is assuming literally giving everything that tube has to give, right? So if you have 4 of those things, that's 400 milliamps. I can tell you right now, most amps are not running those tubes that hard. So the odds are that you're probably not actually going to be burning up 400 actual milliamps worth of current through those tubes, which means you probably don't need to buy a power transformer that has 500 milliamps worth of, you know, capability in it. By the time you start getting up that size, they get ginormous, very expensive, and, you know, almost just too big to even deal with. Let's see. That says for Fender. Let's see if I can find the like normal ones. They have a couple different options here. It's Champ, Fender. It's going to be like in this range here. So this is the 2 series. I like the 3 series. The 3 series generally has like the 50 volt tap for the bias. That's nice if that's where you're going, but so this one has 1,000 volt center tap, at 230 milliamps. So we're looking at the milliamp ratings that these things have. And as you can see, most of them don't have all that much. This one here is probably the highest one I've seen in a while at 535. And it's got an 800 volt center tap, which is to say it's 400 volts on each of those leads. This thing is probably gonna, you don't even want to know. But you can see that most of them don't get up much beyond about 200 and something. Now this is the one I'm using on the Atlas right here. And as you can see, it's one of the bigger ones that there is. It's a beefy bitch. I'll tell you what, this guy is a bad mama jamma. And she's also heavy and expensive too. I buy my transformers. I've seen that Andy does as well, from Hawk Electronics. These guys right here. If you're going to buy transformers and they're going to be Hammond, you might as well buy them from Hawk Electronics. They definitely have... This is another one of the transformers I bought. This thing is freaking-normous. It's too big to even use in an amp. So I got it thinking that's what I wanted to go with. I didn't even look at the specs on it. When it showed up, it's at 575 milliamps. This freaking thing is huge. Unusably huge. It takes up like 1/4 of the whole amp. This isn't even the right picture. And you can see they're not exactly cheap either. So I do have one of those sitting around if you want one. So I use the JX. And you can see why. So at 287 milliamps, that's where most of them seem to go. You need to experiment to see. Yeah. I play around a little bit, as you can tell. I've been talking about it. So I did go with that 500 and something milliamp one. It was just way too big, especially for what I was trying to do. That 280 milliamp one that I got, the 372JX, that thing is running ice cold. Like, it's not even trying to power that thing. And it is a cathode biased amp that it's running in, which actually does run a little bit more current. It's a little less efficient, so it does pull the power, but yeah, that transformer is like way overkill. But getting back to the specs of the output tubes, you know, they have like this range that they work in. They never usually are there because you're never running or taxing the tubes to that level. So you kind of shoot more for the lower end and then add a little bit of safety. So if each EL34, you know, will at least pull 50 milliamps a piece. With 2 of them, you know you got 100. With 4 of them, you know you got 200, right? So you know you need to have something that at least plops out at 280. So that 3 series 372JX that I was talking about would be a good one for that kind of incident. Sans the power portion of it. So 600 volt center tap is only 300 volts per side. 300 times 1.4 is, I don't know, it's just around 400 volts actually on the HT or something like that. I prefer lower HT voltages. It's a me thing. I know Andy's gritting his teeth right now. It's a me thing. So I like designing the amps with a lower voltage because I do want the tubes to last a little bit longer, and I do want them to break up a little bit sooner. So I kind of, like I mentioned before, that I tune the output section to kind of be a part of the whole breakup thing, knowing that most people don't turn their amps all the way up, I kind of build that sound into the whole of the amp. So by the time you're probably at the volume you want to be at, the amp is doing what you wanted it to do, which is be a, ball. Yeah. The 270KX? Tiny. Which one is that one? 272? Is that the one? Or 270? Oh, frick. Now I'm not going to be able to see it. 269, 270. So I don't really use the KX. Which one did I get? Oh, you're probably talking about the voltage then. Because it's at the... So 272JX is about the same as the 372JX. So 600 volt center tap. So 300 per side. Like I say, it gets you about 400 volts actual usable HT on the supply rail. But 287 milliamps. I've only got 2 tubes in there. So in this particular one, I have it set up so I can use either 6V6s, EL34s, or 6L6s, 6V6s, or EL34s is what I have this amp set up to use. And obviously 287 is more than enough for either one of those. So it's one of those multi-tube amps, but it plops out right around 24, 25 watts or something with this pair of 6L6s in there. It's not meant to be a powerhouse, and that's purposeful. None of my amps are really meant to be powerhouses and literally rattle people's teeth out 3 blocks away. I'm not doing what you're doing. So you know what I mean. But yeah, the 372JX, like I mentioned, is the one that I use for that amp, and that thing's running ice cold. You want the KX. All right, we'll talk about that. Let's talk about that. Yeah, so I'll have to dig it out. I have to double check and make sure. I'm pretty certain it's a 372KX. Why am I still clicking on this one? That is not the one I'm looking for. Fucking hell. I'm just having a day sussing these things out. But in either case, high voltage. There we go. This is the 3 series. This is the one I'm looking for. 372... Where the fridge are you? Not the HX. Maybe it's not a KX. I don't know. I gotta double check. It's on the box. I don't think it's a 700 volt CVT. I'm pretty sure it's 600. Yeah, there it is right there. It's this guy. No, that's the one I've been using. This is the other one that I have. Yeah, the KX. Okay, yeah, you're right. Yeah. So that's the one I got sitting in a box over here. Damn. Yeah, it is on the lower side. Oh. Yeah, no, there's a little bit of latency. I'm trying to keep up over here. So I'm behind. I'm behind you, actually, I should say. But I like I say, I like the lower voltages. Mainly because I'm looking for the longevity on the output tubes. And as I mentioned, it's just to include them as part of the whole of the sound. I know that there's some designers that like to make it so that the power section is linear and kind of out of the way, if you will. Like it does what it does, and then the preamp does what it does, that sort of thing. I kind of have that kind of thing going for me up until the point where the phase inverter breaks up. And then I tune the rest of the amp to try to work so that when the phase inverter breaks up, the rest of the amp is... the rest of the amp's starting to blow up too. And then I'll neuter it from there. So my 18 watts kind of done up in that fashion as well. So I literally took it to the point where the tubes are literally just getting destroyed. And then I pulled it back to where it was still, full on saturation, if you will, out of the power section. Yeah. So yeah, I pull it back until it's just right in that point of saturation, but it's not going into explodey splat mode. And I do that on purpose just because I know that most people are going to have, well, at least people that are going to try to be looking for an amp like what I'm building, they're probably going to have a pedal in the front. I'm going to design an amp that has the beans, the balls, the whole nine. I want it to be very original, though. I don't want it to be a copy off of anything necessarily. So it won't be like a Dumble or anything like that. It's going to be its own thing, but I want it to definitely do what it needs to do, but I want it to be more original, I guess. And it'll probably end up having to be 100 water. I don't know if I'm going to use 6L6s. I know you're not a fan of those, Andy, but I don't know if it'll be 6L6s, EL34s, or if I'll do like KT88s. If I was going to go with KT88s, I'd probably only do a pair and run those up to 100 watts. Because I think those things are good for, what, 40, 50 watts a pop? If I'm not mistaken, I think they're good for about that much. It's been a while. I haven't really looked at KT88s in a long while. Let's do that right now. Spec sheet. There we go. And let's see here. Yeah, see how they said like 140? I don't know if you saw that there, but 42 watts. Something like that. So I could probably get, maybe an 80 watt amp out of those or something like that. If I were going to do that, I'd probably do like that. I wouldn't go with a quad of these if I were going to do that route, but I do like using. It gets weird. So here's my thing with using like 4 tubes in the output section, and why I'm not a huge fan of like quartets. So even my 30 watt design that I have, and there's a thing of it in this one here, this video here, if you want to see it. But my 30 watt EL84 amp has this thing. It's just when you have 2 tubes on each half of the amp and they're not exactly the same, they just don't do what you hope, right? I like to neuter things. It just doesn't do what you hope they would do. So I don't know. I like using a pair, and one tube does the job for one side and one tube does the job for the other side. That's a me thing, but obviously different strokes for different folks. It's just I seem to have better luck when I'm only running a pair of tubes, getting the sound that I want exactly. Easier, like it just gets you there a little bit easier. That 4 EL84 AC30 style amp build that I got going, it gives me some challenges. It's always on the verge of instability. Obviously, it's partly the design all in and of itself, but it's just always on the verge. And then, of course, you've got just that much more wire kind of running around. It's different. It interacts differently than the 18 watt, even though it's a totally different circuit altogether anyway, but it just does something different. And I'm not a fan of it. I haven't had that much luck with quads. I like pairs. So that's probably the direction I would go if I were going to go like Andy's doing. So he's probably like, fuck you, Luke. Anyway, we're running up on damn near 3 hours. We're at 2 hours and 46 minutes. So I think we've kind of beat this freaking horse. I got to get up at 3 a.m. It is 15 minutes to 10 right now for me. I got to take the wife to the airport. She's going out of town for a couple days. Parties at my house, everybody. There you go. I see it now. So yeah, you're 3 minutes behind me, and I'm 3 minutes behind you on the response. That's what it is. So 42 watts. Yeah. Of course. So go imagine that. I was hoping to try to keep better track of these things, and I kind of failed in that regard. But ladies and gentlemen, I think we've kind of beat this dead horse. So to recap on what my thoughts are on the whole boutique thing, I don't really give a fuck about it. I kind of feel like these days a true boutique guy is going to be somebody like me or Andy or a couple other companies out there where they're literally building these things one by one with their blood, sweat, and tears in it, which means it has no value to anyone else because people cannot afford to pay us what we're worth. So when you see those amps like Valhalla, we're going to stretch this out a little bit more. Amp. Yeah, let's see here. Yeah, they're good. At least they pop up front and center. These guys here, like the prices that they have for some of their amps is just unfreaking god. I have a pair of the Ragnar. Which one was it? Was it the Jotun? No, I don't know. Whatever. These freaking amps are inane on their price. The Thor 15,750 pounds or euros or whatever the hell that is. I don't know. I can tell you right now, based on what I've seen with that, there's no freaking way in hell they can charge that amount of money. And I've showed this in another one of the other videos. That is a solder ball. That is a solder ball. None of these leads have been straightened, and all these things got solder balls on them. That is a freaking fugly job on the soldering. They're not using special parts. There's nothing unique about these parts here. Vichy, we've already seen earlier, the Vichy parts are cheap enough. And then if that's not enough, you can see here, I don't like the flying leads thing. I don't like this kind of crap here. Put it on the board or don't put it on the board. But don't do this. I don't like this kind of crap here. They got twisted together. Like, just run another turret and run it next to it or find the right value, right? That's me. $15,000. I can build something better than this. Literally, shitting in my hand and throwing it on the wall. I'm not freaking kidding. I know that I can do better than this any day of the week. What I'm getting at is that you, as a builder, can also do better yourself. When we went earlier through the, separating the men from the boys on those pictures on how to build an amp that looks good and is built right versus not, well, obviously you've just seen why I'm not a fan of Valhalla out of, literally unicorn farts. I try to build to a higher standard. So I know that you can too. These guys here, they sold their souls. They're done. Like when they pass away, someone else is going to be building these things and it's going to be nothing. It's going to be a shell of what it is. High watt is a good, I'm talking about modern high watts, by the way, are a good indication of that. Like they're PCB based. The family doesn't even associate to it anymore. It's just a shame that someone else can buy the name and run with it. So, you guys, let's call it a night. Let's do a cheersies. Hold on here. We're gonna dump out a little bit here. I'm gonna call it cheers. 25,000 before. Oh shit, yeah. But I know you also put in the work. That's the thing. You need to spend your kids' inheritance on us. Like this is an investment, right? This is an investment. 30. Well, maybe it could be. I mean, I don't think there's going to be another Ken Fisher, or Dumble kind of scenario going on where he's selling amps at somewhat of a reasonable price at one point, and then 5 years after he passes away, they start going for. Take care of my man, AC. Have a good night, my man. Yes, Lefty X, thank you. I appreciate it. I'm glad you enjoyed this. Tell all your friends. I'm going to try to do this a little more regularly. Probably not going to try to run this long. This went a hell of a lot longer than I thought it would, but I rambled on quite a bit. But I'm glad I'm starting to get some interaction now. I was hoping for this kind of interaction earlier in the game. But thank you. So yeah, where was I? Oh yeah. So, I don't think we're going to have another scenario like that where, you get somebody that was just a Joe Blow building stuff out of his garage that suddenly starts building amps that become worth $100,000 and whatnot anymore. I don't think we're ever going to get there. I don't think we need to. That's not the point. A $25,000 amp is a $25,000 amp because, thank you, Audio 9, thank you. Because that amount of work was put into it. That's what it actually took to get it there. So it should be based on the value of the product and the parts and the time and the energy and stuff that went into that product. These guys here, they're shooting for the bottom of the, it's bean counting. They're literally like, how can we maximize the money that we can get for this product? We know that we can sell it all day at $3,000, so we're going to do whatever it takes to get it out the door so they can make the most amount of money out of that $3,000 that they get for it. And then having everything capsulated into a parent company like this helps them be able to do that. So anyway, when you start getting to the guys in their garage that cannot buy in bulk and, literally trying to account for the cost of every single resistor and stuff like that just isn't practical. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't matter anyway, because it's not about the cost of the resistor at that point. It's really, it comes down to the amount of time that was spent building your amplifier or just building it in general, coming up with something that was unique, different, fills your needs, and meets all your expectations or exceeds all your expectations. So, on that note, I'm going to have a sip of my drink and I'm going to wish you all adieu. So, thank you all so much for sticking with me for the longest yip yap I've ever done. 2 hours and 53 minutes. Holy hell. Thank you guys. We'll see you in the next one.